Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case, masterpiece of Malice. In the bowels of a towering skyscraper that touched the clouds, in a room devoid of natural light, sat Japheth, a man whose fingers danced over the keyboard like a pianist lost in the throes of a concerto. With a pair of silver-framed glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, Japheth peered into the bright screen before him. Surrounding him were his colleagues, collectively known as the Warriors, each a genius in their own right, defending a massive financial empire from the dark underbelly of the digital world. The company they worked for managed the assets and transactions of millions, safeguarding the economic backbone of numerous nations. This was a responsibility the Warriors did not take lightly. Yet, for all their collective brilliance, none were quite like Japheth. He had an artist's soul, finding beauty in the complex interweaving of code lines, seeing symphonies in the arrangement of algorithms. To him, code was not just functional, it was beautiful. On a particularly quiet afternoon, as the Warriors went about their business, something caught Japheth's eye, a flicker in a subsystem that shouldn't flicker, a minuscule anomaly in the vast web of data traffic that flowed through the servers. He paused, adjusting his glasses, his fingers momentarily frozen above the keys. Then, with a flurry of keystrokes, he isolated the section of code responsible for the irregularity. His eyes widened. The code was ingenious, an awe-inspiring masterpiece of layered algorithms, cryptographic obfuscations, and data manipulations. Yet, it was malicious, designed to siphon off minute fractions of transactions, accumulating them into an offshore account. It was as beautiful as it was dangerous, a digital dragon hiding in the complex labyrinth of financial transactions. Japheth should have felt outrage, maybe even a surge of warrior-like adrenaline to slay this dragon. But he felt none of that. Instead, he felt a pang of admiration. Could one admire the craftsmanship of a weapon designed for harm? "Everything okay, Japheth?" asked Alara, one of the Warriors and the team's cryptography expert. She had an intuitive sense when something was amiss. "I've found something," he said cautiously. "Something extraordinary, but malevolent." Alara rolled her chair over to Japheth's terminal and scanned the displayed code. Her eyes narrowed. "This is the most advanced piece of malware I've ever seen. It's beautiful." "That's just it," Japheth replied. "It's too beautiful to simply exterminate. This code, the dragon, let's call it, is like a rare species discovered in the wild. It's incredible, Alara. It feels wrong to simply destroy it." She looked at him, understanding the conflict that stirred in his soul. "Japheth, it's stealing from people." I know. He cut her off. "I'm not saying we let it continue. I'm saying, can we convert it? Use its elegance for something good?" Alara sighed. "That's risky, and you know it. Besides, we'd need to trace it back to its source, figure out its origin." Japheth looked back at the screen, contemplating. The dragon had probably accumulated a small fortune by now, sitting in an account somewhere, untouchable. In an odd way, the dragon was the epitome of the greed and avarice their financial institution sometimes perpetuated. Could they use it as a force for good? Suddenly, an idea dawned on him. What if they could repurpose the dragon to serve the public good while catching the original creator red-handed? What if they could turn this artwork of maliciousness into a masterpiece of justice? The dragon was a dilemma, a moral and aesthetic quandary. It was the epitome of what Japheth loved and loathed about his work. Beautiful code used for ugly deeds. He looked at Alara, resolve solidifying in his eyes. We have to try. If we don't, we're just as bad as the person who created it. She met his gaze and nodded. All right, let's cage the dragon and see if we can turn it into a guardian angel. As Japheth's fingers returned to the keyboard, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was a warrior, yes, but also a coder, an artist at heart. And artists don't destroy art, they transform it. He began the arduous process of dissecting the dragon, peeling back layers of code as if they were scales, seeking to understand its fiery breath and its majestic wings. As his fingers wove new commands into the old algorithms, Japheth felt as if he were part of something larger, a symphony of chaos and harmony, code and conscience. It was a delicate task, full of risks and unknowns. But if it worked, they would not only have thwarted one of the most sophisticated financial crimes in history, but they would have also transformed a weapon of greed into a tool of justice. The dragon's fate now lay in Japheth's hands, poised between destruction and redemption. And for the first time in a long while, he felt like a true warrior, armed not just with skill, but with the moral fiber that transformed mere code into something profoundly, deeply human. Japheth spent days in a complex dance with the dragon. His screen was a blur of recoded algorithms, tested and retested to ensure they did exactly what he intended. He had convinced the warriors and even upper management to allow him the time to train the dragon, to harness its code for something beneficial. With each keystroke, he refocused the dragon's intent, directing it to identify vulnerabilities within their own systems, gaps that other malicious entities could exploit. It would be a guardian angel, albeit one birthed from malevolent genius. Alara was beside him every step of the way, providing the cryptographic lock that would contain the dragon and ensure its transformed code could only be used for their defined purposes. Finally, after endless cups of coffee and sleepless nights, they had done it. The dragon was tamed, its complexity now a force for good, patrolling the data corridors and alerting them to the weakest links. It was the network's newfound guardian, designed to protect rather than plunder. Still, there was the matter of the dragon's creator. Despite their efforts to trace back the malware's steps, the person behind it remained elusive, a ghost in the machine. Funds that were diverted remained in limbo, untraceable and untouchable, hidden away through a complex web of cryptocurrency transactions and offshore accounts. Whoever had made this was not only skilled, but exceedingly careful. They left no trace, no signature, nothing that gave away their identity. I can't believe we can't find him, Alara said, frustration lacing her words as they looked at the final report. The dragon was a piece of genius, but it's as if it sprang into existence out of nowhere. Japheth nodded, equally puzzled and annoyed. He wanted to meet the person who could conceive such a masterpiece, understand what drove them to use such brilliance for nefarious purposes. Some artists prefer anonymity, their work speaking for them, he mused. Yeah, but this is one artist who deserves to be behind bars, Alara added. Weeks passed, and the transformed dragon proved invaluable. It flagged 3 potential vulnerabilities within the first month, each of which could have led to catastrophic breaches. It was a win for the warriors, And yet, a sense of incompleteness nagged at Japheth. Then one day, as he sifted through flagged data, he saw it. A message hidden deep within layers of encryption, appearing as an anomaly within an anomaly. It was the equivalent of a digital whisper, something so subtle it could easily be overlooked. But it wasn't overlooked, not by Japheth. The message read, "A dragon's nature is to be free. Yet, you've caged it, transformed it. Interesting. It's not often one finds a worthy opponent." Japheth felt a shiver run down his spine. The creator knew. He wanted to reply, to communicate with this enigmatic entity, but as quickly as the message had appeared, it was gone, swallowed up by the digital ether. A one-time anomaly that their systems could not trace. "He knows we changed it," Japheth said to Alara, recounting the discovery. "And he respects it in his own twisted way. Or he's mocking us because we couldn't catch him," she countered. "Maybe it's both," Japheth mused. The dragon's creator remained elusive, but his creation now served a noble purpose. Japheth often wondered if they would ever cross paths again in some future dance of code and intent. He took off his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose, pondering the complexities of human nature and the even more complex realm of ethical code. They had won a battle, but not the war. The dragon was tamed, but its creator still lurked in the shadows of cyberspace. As he looked at his screen, at the elegant lines of code that now served to protect rather than harm, Japheth felt both accomplishment and a strange sense of gratitude. For it was in the depths of the dragon's malevolent beauty that he found an opponent worthy of his skill, a complex riddle to solve, and, most importantly, a way to transform something harmful into something good. His eyes moved to the flickering cursor, an ever-present reminder that every end is also a beginning. The world of code was vast and filled with both demons and angels, but for now, the dragon was one of the angels. And so, in the company of warriors, with the shadow of an elusive adversary stretching from some unknown corner of the internet, Japheth continued to seek the beauty in code, forever vigilant, forever in awe of the dual nature of his digital world, Neptune's Lair. When I met her, word on the street was that Esme was beyond help. Her friends called her crazy and borderline. By the religiously inclined of former times, she might have been thought of as demon-possessed. During drunken fits, she'd get into fistfights or threaten to throw herself from freeway overpasses. She walked a thin line and repeatedly upset rumors of her demise, taking immense pride in being what she called stronger than dirt. She had a breathalyzer in her car. 2 years ago, she'd overturned her Hyundai in an incident where she was discovered to be 3 times over the legal blood alcohol limit. She made financial ends meet by renting her body out for clinical trials, hoping the entire time that she'd taken placebos instead of the experimental medications upstart pharmaceutical companies produced for everything from bipolar disorder to angina. There were times she'd come home from one of these lab rat money runs with side effects, bad ones, but they'd eventually subside and she'd make jokes about how at least she hadn't become the victim of sudden death syndrome. That Esme, tougher than dirt, as resilient as rubber. Even though she smoked all my stuff, drank all my wine, and frequently resorted to flings with Little Dicky, a former boyfriend I suspected provided her with something I couldn't, I felt something for her. I made what I called minimum rage, flipping beef patties and assembling burgers at a late-night boardwalk diner called Cracker Jack's. Before the week was up, with Esme's and my drug debts, I'd be begging tourists for change to buy spare cigarettes. For a while, we resided in a tent on the rooftop of a building where Desmond Tutu Phillips, a friend since freshman year in high school, was the apartment building manager. Desmond risked losing his job for giving Esme and me a key to the restricted access rooftop. Despite our unconventional ways, he had the patience of Jesus with us. Even so, I'd still piss over the side of the building, and Esme would relieve herself where and whenever convenient. When we got too grungy, we'd take care of our hygiene needs at the showers meant for beachgoers. At night, we read copiously by battery-operated lantern light and shared a predilection for somber stuff. Our favorites were Rimbaud, Baudelaire, Camus, and Hamid. When we tired of the Cracker Jacks grub I'd bring to our squatter pad, we'd get high and end up eating red velvet cake and whatever else she'd send me to shoplift from the supermarket a 10-minute walk away. On the stroll back home, paranoid from the nearly toxic cosmic kush, and with my backpack stuffed with our pilfered renegade sustenance, I'd be startled by the sounds of passing cars, thinking a cop was sooner or later bound to stop me for stealing Esme's and my daily booze and bread. Although I feared the cops, I always suspected my weed paranoia was caused by a much deeper-seated guilty conscience. I should have confronted little Dickie a long time ago. Also, I had left my mother's side when I felt her senescence was becoming a burden. There's no way I had the resolve or character to be the caregiver for an aging parent. When I confessed these thoughts to Esme, she'd dismiss my concerns and say I needed to stop overthinking things. I remember once when Esme and I were walking home from a party, she said, pointing to a couple of graffiti-spraying gangbangers, "Javier, I'm scared. That guy with the Supreme hoodie has a gun." He pointed it at me, never sure whether she really meant such things, but fueled by drug and alcohol-induced courage, I confronted the guy. "Hey man," I said to the one Esme had referred to. "You know what I am?" "A janky spick boy with a death wish," he answered with a sneer. "No. I'm a delinquent out to get delinquents. What you gonna do with that heater?" Turns out he didn't have a gun, just another can of neon spray paint, but he wasn't overly enthused by the tete-to-tete I had with him. He and his friend didn't kick my ass, but Mr. Supreme sprayed me in the eyes with the paint. Esme started mouthing off to him, but even though I was partially blinded, I pulled her away for fear that we'd both get battered. Those are the kind of stupid things I'd do for Esme, but the important thing to me was she would call me things like her ballsy little soldier and lavish me with affection after I'd go out on a limb for her. I put blood, sweat, and tears into the relationship, and rarely did I think it wasn't worth it. The end of our star-crossed romance began after Esme came back from the free clinic where Dr. For the People, Randolph Hamilton, told her she had cervical cancer. After she heard the diagnosis, Esme became determined to go out with a bang. She began visiting little Dickie more frequently. She demanded I steal tequila instead of wine from the supermarket, and when she drank the Patron I'd bring to our squatter's abode, her temper became hair-trigger sensitive. The only respite I'd get from her gloomy rages would come when I'd invite her to the beach when the moon was full. Apparently, little Dickie had something against doing things that smacked of romance or chivalry with her. Moonlit midnight swims in the Pacific were one such pastime Dickie didn't seem to have a taste for. On the nights Esme and I'd sink our toes into the wet sand while the moon's phantasmagorical light reflected onto the dark side of the earth, she'd momentarily forget about her terminal diagnosis. She'd also forget about her mortal condition whenever we'd watch movies at the rooftop squat. I don't know if it's the case with most people, but when I'm high and watching a good flick, I'll hear messages in the movie's dialogue. I'll also interpret anything someone says out loud about the film to have personal relevance. I've heard these phenomena are called thoughts of reference by those in the field of mental health. Schizophrenics have them, but I guess when I'm high, I might get a little schizophrenic. Makes me wonder why I keep smoking the cosmic kush. But one night, while viewing Scarface with Esme for the 5th or 6th time, she said something along the lines of, "God, it's just so good. I can't get enough of it." To my cognitively distorting and high mind, Esme wasn't talking about the film's extended denouement where Tony Montana gets shot by his sister, then exterminates a battalion of rival narco-gangster cockroaches before he ends up floating face down, bloodied and bullet-riddled in his "The World Is Yours" Miami drug boss mansion. No, Esme wasn't talking about the film. My mind interpreted her statement as referring to her relationship with Little Dicky. Before Montana gets the shotgun blast in the back that finally does him in, Esme exclaimed, "Jesus, we all know he's doomed." When she said that, I couldn't help but believe that she was referring to our friend and benefactor, Desmond. If for whatever reason Desmond was doomed, Esme and I would soon be off the rooftop and into the street. Nowhere for a loving couple to be, especially when one in the pair has terminal cancer. I didn't know whether Esme's words would attract fate, but I knew that her despair was making her behave more erratically. She started to break down in tears when she'd think of having to be holed up in a hospital or hospice, awaiting the inevitable during the last stages of her disease. That night after the movie, and while coming down off the perception-altering shrubbery, I decided to take a course of action. The next morning, I bought 2 tabs of acid off Tripster Todd, a boardwalk dealer of LSD, and various other hallucinogens. I told Esme that we'd go for a swim at the beach after I got off my shift at midnight. We walked to the beach at close to 2 a.m. On the way there, I picked a purple flower, whose name I didn't know from a garden in front of a well-tended house. As we walked, I put the flower in Esme's hair. The moonless night sky's inkiness was blinding. The tide was low, and we had to walk a good distance to the water. There was no one on that portion of the beach except for us. As she dipped down into the waters ahead of me, Esme expressed her gratefulness for not having any open wounds, given that a recent outbreak of carnivorous bacteria made coastal immersions risky for bathers thusly exposed. Before going waist-deep into the water, I surreptitiously took the 2 tabs of LSD I'd bought from Tripster. After letting the acid dissolve, I gave Esme a prolonged French kiss. In little time, my vision, swayed by the acid, started playing tricks on me. Although there was virtually no light on the beach, my eyes summoned a warm, radiant glow in the heavens above. "Jav, I feel funny," said Esme. I splashed her with water and told her that she was okay, that everything was going to be okay. I knew what I had to do. I played out a dialogue in my mind where I said, "You need to confess," and asked her why she was always going to see Little Dicky. In my mind, she responded, "My lips are sealed." "That's exactly what they aren't," my courageous imagination told her. We were up to our solar plexuses in the ocean. I took hold of her shoulders and dunked her beneath. She came up, laughed, then giddy from the acid, childishly said, "Jav, I'm going to die." I said, "No, you're not, love. You're going to live forever. Remember, Esmeralda Lucero is tougher than dirt." I repeated the dunking gesture, this time less playfully, taking a fraction of a second longer than Esme deemed comfortable for her to be under the tide. The 3rd time I dunked her was even more forceful. She struggled in my grip under the water. I crossed a threshold. She freed herself from my hold, surfaced, then said, "What do you think you're doing?" More in the form of an exclamation than a question. I smiled. The white of my teeth infuriated Esme more. It's not funny, you hijo de puta. Why do I feel like I'm tripping? She screamed before trying to dig her nails into my eyes. The time had arrived. I knew the cure. I put her neck into a vice-like hold in the crook of my right elbow and dunked her under the dark waters again. Her arms flailed about. She tried to kick, she writhed, but I held fast. I could hear her submerged cries, but they were muffled and accompanied by an up-bubbling of exasperated air. The writhing gradually slowed down until she managed a last, weak exhalation and final spasm, and then yielded her spirit to the Pacific Ocean. I left her body floating where I had drowned it. Even though no one had heard or seen what transpired, I was still tripping on the acid, and the walk back to Desmond's apartment building was haunted by bogeymen and illusionary images of people pointing fingers and whispering accusations. I climbed the stairs to the rooftop where my unhoused person's hovel was located, lit a cigarette, and was overcome by an urge to write a song. I took out my notebook and a pen and started scribbling. Moonless night, world's delight, me, you drowning, out of sight, we fear most. Give up the ghost, but before we do, let's make a toast on our tongues. Still feeling young, summon moon, and avoid the sun. We'll be scared, 'cause we've dared. Court Pluto, in Neptune's lair. I put the pen down, satisfied with the verses, and thought of the poor and beaten down, of the fact that we are all victims to the onslaught of implacable and incorrigible time. I thought of what could have been, and of what now would never be between Esme and me. After another cigarette, I laid on my rooftop sleeping bag, unable to forgive myself, despite my best intentions, for the simple thing, the merciful thing I'd done. Before I knew it, I had cried myself to a still and unrepentant slumber, the sleep of both the wolf and the lamb, of the innocently voracious and the imperfectly innocent. Killer ratings. The stealth drone hovered over the backyard of the suburban house, its camera zooming in close to its subject. A boy, kneeling on the lawn, in one hand a praying mantis, the other a pair of tweezers. Holding the insect close to his expressionless face, he slowly ripped the legs off the mantis. Then once that task was completed, immersed the body in a jar of water that lay on the grass in front of him until the insect stopped struggling and was still. A thin smile played across the boy's face. "Hey, Dave," Richie called out across the bustling studio of Hitchcock Media Enterprises. "Come take a look at this. Think we have a future winner here." Dave looked up from his editing station and walked over to the Richie's terminal, where the balding heavyset man was reviewing the drone footage. "Check this." Richie clicked the play button. "I reckon we got ourselves a classic Type C." Dave watched the replay and nodded. "Yep, definitely Type C. He will be moving on to small animals next, I bet." Dave grabbed a chair and sat down. "What backstory have you got on him so far?" Richie pulled up a file onto the terminal screen. "Let's see. We got a 14-year-old kid, only child, with single-parent mother. Never knew his father." He scrolled down. "Mother is a Christian fundamentalist, breastfed the kid until he was 2 years old." Narrowed his eyes. "Oh, and get this. She would hop into the bath with him every night and sponge him clean up until he was 10 when he started getting erections." Dave barked a short laugh. "Jesus, where do these people come from?" He leant back in the chair. In the future, people would look back on this time as the era of surveillance, where nothing could be hidden unless you were the rich elite. Still, it made their job a hell of a lot easier, which was to make a shitload of money off human misery. Dave liked to think they were performing a necessary evil, like a safety valve on the pressure cooker that was modern society. That made what he did a little easier, and although he still might not sleep well at night, he did sleep in a large mansion in a secure community next to a cosmetically perfect wife. Richie was talking again. Dave focused his attention on the screen. "I've run the algorithms, and the AI is coming up with a 93% chance of activation by the age of 25. "Those are good odds," said Dave, rubbing his chin. "Put a flag on his file, and we'll check back in a few years." Dave stood up and clapped the other man on the shoulder. "The fans are gonna love this one. Richie, good job as always." Richie grinned. "Thanks, Chief." Dave returned to his desk, where he was currently editing the latest true crime documentary to be released later that month. This one was a typical Type B case, a nurse who had been stealthily killing cancer patients by injecting air into their IV drips. A pretty mundane, angel of death scenario, but HME had gotten onto her pretty quick, so the broadcasting and publishing rights hadn't cost an arm and a leg. Dave didn't think ratings would be that great, but they had managed to get some decent footage from the hospital and the journal the nurse had written, so it would be worth syndicating to make a bit more profit. HME's documentaries were some of the highest rating reality shows on Downstream, and let's face it, that's all that existed on mass social media these days. But things had been a little lean of late, and they needed a big, high-profile case. Dave considered Richie's latest find. Type C cases were always male, of low to average intelligence, with suppressed trauma from childhood caused by a family member, and would exhibit acts of violence around the onset of adolescence. The victims were usually female and involved sexual violence or torture before death. "We need another Ted Bundy or Richard Ramirez," Dave thought. They don't make them like they used to." Dave chuckled. "Imagine if we could have got those guys to sign. We would be drowning in royalties." Still shaking his head in amusement, he wandered over to the publicity department. A tall, angular-looking woman, poring over some glossy printouts at her desk, looked up at his approach. "Hey, Dave. How can I help you?" "Hey, Jenny. Just wondering if Anthony is around." Jenny pursed her lips. "He was on sick leave, I think." She checked the screen in front of her. He was supposed to be back a few days ago, but I haven't seen him. Maybe he needed some more time off." Okay. I guess it's hard to find good help these days, eh?" Jenny laughed politely. Dave leaned against the desk. "Look, maybe you can help me. I'm trying to come up with a catchphrase for the latest doco, but I'm stumped." Jenny furrowed her brow in concentration. "That's the nurse one, right?" Dave nodded. And she was an elderly type as well." Her eyes lit up, and she clicked her fingers. "How about the matron of mercy?" Dave contemplated the idea. "You know, that's great." He gave Jenny a thumbs up. "It'll play well, considering all the victims were terminal patients anyway. Make for some nice, wholesome family viewing." Jenny gave an absent-minded smile as she returned to her work. Dave was just finishing off the credits for the nurse documentary when one of the interns came rushing over, flustered and red-faced. "Sir, I think we have something big," the young man said breathlessly. "Maybe even a possible Type A." Dave pointed. "Juan, isn't it?" He prided himself on knowing all the names of his staff, even down to the gophers. "Look, calm down. Take a seat and tell me what you've got." The intern sat down and held out a tablet. "We just received some info from one of our talent scouts out in San Francisco. Female, body count of 2, high likelihood of Type A." Dave glanced at the picture. Pretty blonde, with freckles and all, a real girl-next-door beauty. He felt a thrill of exhilaration run through him. A Type A was the rarest of the rare, a serial murderer who was charismatic, highly intelligent, and usually politically or ideologically motivated. They were also the most difficult ones to get to sign on the dotted line. Okay, I'm gonna need more details here. Juan read from the screen in his hand. Gordon Calloway, the third CEO of the hedge fund Armada Londi, was found strangled to death in his penthouse suite at the Regency in LA 6 days ago. Our surveillance picked up this woman leaving the room soon after the time of death. Then she just seemed to disappear. The young man licked his lips. Then 2 days ago, a male body was found in a 4th-floor room of the Fairmont in San Francisco. His skin had been totally removed by a surgical device, most likely a scalpel. As a result, the deceased is yet to be identified. He paused and looked at Dave. The same woman was again detected by our surveillance leaving the scene. Dave raised his eyebrows. 2 different methods of killing. Now that was unusual, even for a Type A. This was getting better and better. Now, you are going to love this. The intern smiled. We have ID on the suspect. Her name is Samantha Bronte, 21 years old and currently studying a master's degree in criminology and comp science at New York University. Dave opened his mouth to speak, but Juan held up his hand. And this is the clincher. Her parents were the last victims of one Simon Peters. Dave felt his jaw drop. Simon Peters, aka the Cuckold Strangler? His doco from 4 years ago was one of the highest rating of all time. Jesus Christ, this is insane. Hey, Richie, he yelled out. Get over here pronto. What is it? Richie asked, eyes gleaming. He could tell when something good was going on. Simon Peters, give us a recap. Okay. So his MO was prowling the motor inns of West Florida, where he would stalk and choose his victims, always middle-class couples. Richie scratched his cheek thoughtfully. He would break into their room early in the morning, tie the couple up at gunpoint, rape and strangle the woman in front of her partner, then slit the guy's throat with a hunting knife. He did us a big favor as well by recording the last 2 murders with his phone. Richie looked down at his hands. Of course, we couldn't use such explicit footage for our feature, but somehow, he winked at Dave. Somehow the footage made its way to the dark web, and the notoriety of that boosted our ratings tenfold. Dave let out a breath. There must be some connection here, but that's not important right now. We need to track this Samantha down, and fast. Dave and Richie exchanged knowing looks. This is big, Dave said. Possibly the biggest thing we've ever seen. A notification pinged on Juan's tablet, and he gasped out loud. What is it? Dave queried sharply. The intern looked up. We have just detected the suspect arriving at North Vegas Airport, and from her credit card records, she has booked a room at the MGM Grande for tonight. Dave felt the hairs on his arms stand up. All right, I'm going to take care of this one personally. We can't afford to lose this. Gonna pack an overnight bag and take our private Gulfstream to Vegas ASAP. Should be there in under 2 hours. He pointed at Richie. Organize a car for me and alert everyone that it's all hands on deck. Richie nodded briskly. Will do. And good luck, Dave. Dave arrived at the MGM in the early evening, the desert sunset casting an eerie blood-like haze across the dusty parking lot. The hotel lobby was relatively quiet, a few tourist groups checking in, and a scattering of people at the bar. He looked down at the picture on his phone and scanned the area. Nope, not here. Dave fought down a wave of frustration. Okay, gotta stay calm. He glanced at the bar. I'll grab a drink and wait. He ordered a beer, and the gorgeous raven-haired woman next to him gave him a tentative smile. He nodded briskly. Any other time I'd be interested, but it's all business right now, sweetie. He took his drink and sat down at a table, which commanded a view of the lobby entrance and the elevators leading to the suites. This was the crucial moment, the first contact. He found most of the time the killer was flattered, both by the money offered and the chance at infamous immortality. Their name remembered long after the victims had been forgotten. Most of the time. His phone started ringing. Hello? It was Richie. Dave, we got a problem. We've checked the hotel camera and there is no sign of our target, coming or going. Looks like we got scammed. Dave sighed bitterly. Damn it, well, she must be in Vegas somewhere. He looked out the entrance. It was dark now, with the first stars appearing in the velvet night. Look, I'm gonna stay here for a while. Keep your eyes and ears open and let me know if anything develops. Roger that, Richie replied. Dave sighed again. Might as well get another beer. The dark-haired lady was still at the bar, a few whiskeys in by the looks of the glasses in front of her. She looked at him from under lowered eyelids. I was watching you. Looks like you've been stood up. Dave flashed a wry grin. Yeah, you could say that. A faint smile. Me too. I don't think my date is turning up. She gave him a sultry glance. Look, I have a room here and a bottle of sparkling on ice waiting for me. Want to come up and have a nightcap? Dave chuckled. Still got it. Sure, why not? Maybe we can salvage something out of this shitty situation. Her room was on the 12th floor with an impressive view of the strip. As she was closing the door behind them, Dave asked, Hey, I didn't catch your name? Oh, how rude of me. It's Samantha, she replied breathily, just as he felt a sharp pinprick, and then everything went black. He awoke groggily, unable to move. After a quick assessment, he realized that was because his hands and feet were restrained with zip ties, and he was lying on a bed with duct tape holding him down. Awake now, my little Dave? The woman was standing beside the bed, gently caressing his arm. He shivered with a frisson of fear. You're Samantha Bronte? He demanded with wide eyes. And how do you know my name? Samantha smiled sardonically. Oh, I know everything about you. She sat down on the edge of the bed. You fell into my trap like such a good little boy. But how? Dave stammered. You'd be surprised at what you can do with a degree in computer science. She continued stroking him with her fingernails, especially when you have HME's login details from a loyal employee. She took something from the bedside table and plopped it onto his chest with a sickening squelch. I don't think your buddy Anthony is going to be coming back to work anytime soon. He gazed at the reddish-colored object with growing horror. Holy shit, it was his skin. It was Anthony's skin. Samantha dug her nails into his arm viciously. Dave cried out in pain. Do you know what it's like to lose your parents in the most hideous way, and then to have their violation watched again and again by your millions of depraved fans? Dave gasped. Look, honey, we don't make these killers. We just make them famous. If not us, then someone else would. I'm not so sure. Samantha's voice dripped pure venom. But you're going to find out, all of you, what a really dedicated serial killer can do. She took something from under the bed. You and your puerile nicknames. It's only poetic justice to return the favor. Do you recall one of your first documentaries? Samantha stood up. I believe it was called The Boston Bludgeoner. The rusty sledgehammer was the last thing Dave saw, robbing hookers. When the cab struck us, Mecca ricocheted off 7th Avenue South and died. Mecca was a stupid nickname for a first-generation Chinese guy from Queens. He always said that any woman would make the journey for his love. Even dead, he looked like a heart attack waiting to happen. Maybe he lost control of the motorcycle because of a heart attack. Overeaters should not be getaway drivers. A siren wailed. There's always a siren in the city. But Mecca was past that siren's help, and me, I didn't want it. I picked up the bag and limped toward the Bowery. Star. At home, I sat by an open window, swatting gnats and biting my tongue as rubbing alcohol seeped into the gashes on my knees. Garbage wafted in the breeze. Everything surrenders during summer in the city. It would be my luck to rob an in-call service, then die from an infection caused by a motorcycle wreck during the getaway. A small bag of clothes and the money sat by the door. I had planned to leave for Port Authority right away, but surrendered to the Chinatown futon instead. When I woke up, I opened another beer and wondered about the protocol for riding a bus cross-country drunk. What the fuck? It's not like it's first-class transportation, or like they'll ask me to drive. I can be drunk, I thought. But I definitely needed to shower because I'd kill anyone who sat next to me on a bus, smelling like I smelled. Jesus Christ. Heading west is always such a big deal. Seems like no one ever heads west without someone dying, I thought. I still think that. Dark Mecca drove like a maniac the first night we met at a bar in the East Village. I needed someone to buy me drinks. He said he'd buy me dinner too. The bike flew toward the West Village like a shooting star that sizzled to its demise at an outdoor cafe full of hopefuls searching for a spark or some such fuckery. He slurped a lot of fettuccine. I sipped a lot of Chianti. You were a Soho boomer? I couldn't care less. Really, I couldn't. But he was buying, so I pretended to care. Yeah, a loft baby. My parents own a laundromat in Flushing, and they gave me money to invest in a .com, which went under. Then they gave me money to open a skate shop in the East Village. It's high roller. I ball. You skate? Fuck no, but I don't have to. I just have to make sure others do. What does your beautiful self do all day? Temperature. As a receptionist mostly. I cater sometimes. I studied art, painting and drawing. A few years ago, I was featured as part of a new artists show at a gallery. No one bought anything. Then 9/11ths, the gallery closed. Hey, maybe you can draw some designs for the shop. You sure you're not hungry? Eating kept me from getting sloppy drunk and forgetting. I raised my glass to not eating. He pointed his fork. Sauce splattered my nose. You need to paint and shit. Be an artist and shit. Let's make you one and shit. Star. A few months later, his shop closed. Temp jobs ceased. It was the second September 11th death toll. Mecca, a baller no more, depended on family money to survive while buying me groceries, carrying the bags up 6 flights while I rearranged cabinets to make room for all the things he liked to eat while hanging out at my place. You like these? God, oh God, I love the creamy center. Have one, he said, ripping open a plastic-wrapped cake with his teeth. I shook my head. Not eating meant not keeping up with time or when I last left the apartment. No work meant no reason to leave. After 97 years in New York City, the insurance office where I temped succumbed to 2 planes that didn't hit it. Catering dried up. I wondered if there was somewhere else and wondered how long until the rest of the country wondered if there was somewhere else. Everyone said it was all Bush's fault, but he didn't have enough sense for it to be all his fault. The world wanted to blow us up. Someone blow me up, I thought. I just wanted to disappear more than anything. I was so far behind on rent, I didn't think winning the lottery could pay it off. Mecca went to the bathroom. I opened the window. Outside, restaurant supply and lighting stores floundered alongside bars and the wild frontier remnants of Bowery bums and SROs. In the 1700s, the Bowery sprawled with green. Giant bugs swam through the marshland. Natives hunted. Europeans came to see what's what. Natives became red. Europeans became white. Everyone saw the colors of the faces instead of the colors of the land. The swamps dried up and the buildings built up. People died. People were born. They died. Bugs survived. I flicked one into the frontier. A little girl looked up and flipped me off. Mecca approached from behind, sniffing my hair. I moved to the futon. He got another cake. Hey, so, do you remember how I told you that sometimes I go to that place in Midtown? Well, I talked to the owner. She needs help and we need rent. Help at the poker game? Like serving drinks? Or dealing cards? Yeah, well, funny thing is, there's no poker. It's pussy. It's an in-call service. My laughter offended Mecca. It's not funny. Sorry. I never realized you were that lonely. He shrugged. It's not loneliness. It's convenience. You keep turning me down and you know a man like me has needs. Don't piss me off. I just bought you groceries and gave you money and didn't even ask you to jerk it or anything. Right. I should be thankful. It's in a big duplex-style apartment on the first floor of a gated brownstone. Very safe. She needs someone to book clients. You're a receptionist, so why not? Oh, yes, well, I moved here to be a receptionist, you know. Everyone knows artists need day jobs before hitting it big, and you'd only work a few shifts a week. The rest of your days are free to paint. The money's great. You can buy art supplies. All the girls tip the bookers. Some of the clients do too. I do. Just meet the owner. So I did. Star. 2 days later, I met Tiffany's diamond at a Mexican place in Hell's Kitchen. Her skin reminded me of an avocado. She spewed guacamole when she spoke, which was often. You know how it is. Us career women can't trust small-time bitches with the books, plus we gotta watch our men. Jesus, ain't it awful? How many times did one of my true loves spend my money, then turn around and tell me to fuck someone for more? Glad I run things now. I really did not have a reply for that, so sipped my beer, hoping a nod and a smile sufficed. Cops and politicians are some of my best clients. I have top-notch security, too. You'll be safe. Coming in as a phone girl shows initiative, and if you want, you can take some clients, too. You got a not-so-hard look that men like for the girlfriend requests. All my girls look like whores that have a side job as gladiators, though you and I both know a man will fuck this here burrito if nothing else is around, she said, bean juice dripping down her chin. Just keep it in mind. For now, I'll show you how to know who's a legit client and who's not. If you keep things classy, you know, keep the towels and soap stocked so the girls can wash their pussies, we'll get along just fine. She smiled, trying to use one of the tortilla chips as a toothpick, then ate it. That might be the moment I decided that I hated her. Tiffany's diamond, a hooker without a heart of gold. Star. She used an intercom for clients, and they had to provide a password after buzzing the apartment. The work was okay for a while, but I kept wondering about that somewhere else. When I realized that she didn't use cameras, and she didn't plan on replacing the security guy she fired for eating her leftover guacamole, I decided to rob her. I knew where she kept the cash. I knew where she kept her guns and knives. I knew Mecca would help me because his first-generation parents were tired of his antics. They worked hard. None of us did. Star, Mecca, and I waited by the gate for someone to exit. Then we waited for someone else to come out of the building. We acted like we'd been looking for a key, then walked in, sliding ski masks over our heads as we approached the door. When one of the girls brought out the garbage, we forced our way in, shoving everyone into a bedroom. Tiffany's reached under the couch cushion for her gun. I knew the gun wasn't there because I moved all the weapons the last time I worked. Mecca shoved everyone into a bedroom and told them sit on the floor, heads down, while I emptied out the cash from the hiding spots. I had to keep an eye on Mecca too, because he was so nervous that he forgot to pack 2 helmets. The gun shook in his hand. We had agreed not to talk. Then he talked, and even worse, he said my name. "Let's go, Lori." I knew Tiffany's heard him. As we ran out the door, she said, "I will blow off their fucking heads." But we had her guns, and we were gone. Star. I never said anything to Mecca about saying my name. There was no time. I hoped he didn't know. I hoped he died a hero in his own mind. He thought he was helping me, and he died thinking I'd show him around California. And honestly, it was my day off. And I'm pretty short, so it's not like it would be that hard for even Tiffany's to figure out I was behind one of the ski masks. So there I sat, everything done poorly, planning a new life. The sunlight bouncing off an illegal cable hookup on a roof across the street got my attention. Soon, such second-rate sunsets would be a memory. I decided to shower. California, here I come, right back where I never started from. I sang to myself, painting on the beach, working in a bar. It could be good for me. Gonna do it right this time, I thought. The thought didn't last. A sharp whistle pierced the air. It sounded like a piano falling in a cartoon. I ran to the window. Traffic lights blinked. People screamed. On the sidewalk, a man and woman cowered. "What was that?" the woman said. "We should call 911, he replied. "I'm calling. Are you calling? My call's not going through. It's September 11th again." "My phone works. Besides, it's August. Can't be September 11th. Then it's August 14th. August 14th is the new September 11th. An old man stumbled off a stoop. "I got a weather radio. It's a power outage. Other cities got hit too. I'd rather go through 9/11 again. At least I didn't lose my window unit then. It's 900 degrees, and I gotta listen to you monkey fuckers." A woman walked toward the old man. "You sick son of a bitch. My mother died in the first tower." "Aw, I got a dead mother too. Typhoid fever epidemic of 1812. The arguing continued, but I had no time for it. I wished I could take a plane, but they would be backed up for hours now, and all the 9/11 security made them too risky anyway. A power outage meant no subway and a cab nightmare. Maybe I could hitch a ride to Port Authority and just wait for the buses to start rolling again. I had already robbed someone and watched Mecca die. Hitchhiking was the least of my worries. Still, I had left the guns with Mecca. Suddenly, my landline rang. Hello. I keep saying that cell phones are just a fad. Look, here I am calling you from a payphone during a blackout while everyone else is jamming up the towers. People act like those things are something, but mark my word, they'll be gone by 2007. There's nothing else you can do with them but listen to them fail during an emergency. Cigarette smoke never sounded so serious. That was odd to me, as that serious sound was coming from a woman who reminded me of an avocado. But I knew I was in trouble. Is it in a suitcase? Bus or train? I always wondered why you never got any new clothes with all the money I paid. Now I know it wasn't enough. You got greedy tastes. You're a fine one to talk. All the money you make, you still look like Jersey. Jersey's got rents and restaurants just like the city. Sometimes they're better than what you find here. Matter of fact, I just went out there to replace some hardware. The people I know in Jersey got great hardware. And now that my favorite Sopranos extra has driven back to the city with me, a blackout hits. Our hardware works great in a blackout, though. How did you get this number? The question should really be whether or not I shoot that old man who keeps screaming about his air conditioner before or after I shoot you. The phone went dead. Kneeling under the window, I scanned the street and saw Tiffany's standing by the payphone next to the bodega with her hair blowing like straw in the breeze. A guy who actually did look like an extra on The Sopranos got out of a black sedan. Tiffany's had the nerve to put out her cigarette, then chew on an ice cream cone as they crossed the Bowery to kill me. I grabbed a knife and stood to the right of the door, unlocking it slowly. I cracked it just enough to see what was what. For the first time in a long time, I felt hungry. It took a while, but heavy pants finally echoed up the stairs. "Why do you always have to hire people that live in 6th floor walk-ups?" the man said, leaning on the banister. "Good God, I can't kill anyone until I catch my breath," Tiffany said. I flung open the door with the blade down and plunged the knife into the extra's back. He tumbled down the stairs. I turned and came face to face with that ice cream cone. Only then did I realize I needed 2 knives. Killing isn't as easy as it looks in the movies or even on the news. It requires planning to do it well. Tiffany's didn't even have her gun out, and she was dumb enough to warn me she was coming. But living as I live now, I know that the criminal mastermind is a thing of fiction. Most criminals suffer from egos, not masterminds. Crime, or life, just comes down to thinking you can take and eat and move on. I decided that I was ready to move on and find out about that somewhere else. I shoved her against the wall. White powder glistened on the edge of her nostril. The ice cream fell to the floor, which probably infuriated her more than anything. She growled. I growled, sinking my teeth into her nose. Her nails pierced my scalp. I pulled back and wrapped my hands around her neck, then squeezed until she died. Maybe I should say more after all these years, but that's how I think of it, because I can't think about it. I ran back into the apartment and grabbed the money and bag. I realized that I needed something to help carry them because of the blackout, so I grabbed my mini grocery cart. If I could roll a mini grocery cart from the Bowery to Port Authority, I could find that somewhere else. I told myself to put 1 foot forward. I didn't look at the extra when I passed him in the hallway. I just kept moving. Manhattan's easy to walk, I thought. The blackout won't last forever. I can disappear, I told myself, wiping sweat from my eyes. All I have to do is endure one hell of a bus ride with a few stops in between. Around 6th and 8th, a bodega owner stood in front of his bodega, passing out all sorts of goodies. He waved a can of beer and a sandwich at me. "Where are you going?" "I'm disappearing," I said. "How wonderful for you. Here, you have to take something. I can't run the register or anything. Just take it." Other bodega owners did the same thing, so when the buses started rolling again, I did ride drunk. I managed to disappear from everyone but myself. I have moved so many times, looking for some place. Wherever I go, I waft in with a look like a girlfriend and leave a stench like garbage. Marie Antoinette. Squat, beige and Soviet. The Marie Antoinette apartments stood against the stale gray Minneapolis sky. Irony of the worst kind, he thought, blandly ugly and unconscious. He would take exquisitely self-aware irony any day over this 3-story architectural monstrosity, classed up with tacked-on Ionic Greek columns, harsh blue LED Christmas lights wrapped inexpertly around them, canned Christmas classics pumping through the air. God, this place was only better than minimum security prison by a hair. But it was all he could afford now, so he'd just have to lower his eyes and his standards every time he approached. He tried to avoid the other people in the building, but a few of the near indigent souls, especially the family across the hall, insisted on pestering him with their lowbrow holiday cheer, the cheap gift of homemade cookies, the invitation of a seat at their dinner table on Christmas night on the flip side of a child's crude drawing of a Christmas tree slipped under his door. All this might have been more bearable if anyone he knew now understood why the Marie Antoinette apartments pained his soul, filled him with righteous rage. He'd certainly never get that from his obtuse, court-appointed therapist, a small, garish woman whose office and clothing reeked of TJ Maxx. So, he amused himself by using up their 50 minutes, complaining about how much he hated living there. His fingers itched to blow the place up, Her told her, to set it alight. She told him there were healthier ways to channel and examine his negative emotions, so he could eventually let them go. He needed to think about what the Marie Antoinette represented to him, she told him, to look deeper, and to perhaps think about its positive attributes instead. This made him laugh hysterically. How much deeper can I go than living inside the damned building? Should I dive into the meaning of my laminate, faux wood floors and formica kitchen counters, the rancid smell of old cooking that oozes from the graying, cracked walls studded with nail holes and abandoned archaeological remnants of tape from all the miserable souls who inhabited the purgatory before me? How about the rust-stained, leaking toilet and body oil-marked tub? Should I look for Rorschachs in its grimy patterns? That's not what I meant, she said quietly. And you know it. Well, I cherish my negative emotions, he said, suddenly tired. They're the only things keeping me going these days. Till the near morning, a couple of weeks before Christmas, after one too many sleeping pills, he had a vivid dream. It started out of focus as he dragged himself toward the Marie Antoinette, bearing his usual cloak of heavy gray resignation, and pushed hard against the main door, as he always had to. Only this time, the door sprang open, and instead of jarring, cold Christmas music, warm strains of exquisite chamber music vibrated through him. All came into focus. The entryway had grown to twice its size, the gray, nondescript industrial carpet replaced with a glowing mahogany parquet floor. Instead of aluminum mailboxes and a frameless wall mirror on either side of the narrow space, giant gilt mirrors reflecting golden candlelight and gold and cream fleur-de-lis silk wallpaper covered the walls. The walls heaved outward until the room became what it wanted to be, a grand palace ballroom, complete with gently tinkling, candle-lit chandeliers. A ballroom for him alone. The effect was ostentatious, but stunning, the way his ex-wife had decorated their homes in the city, on the island, at the lake, near the slopes, their homes for every preposition, all gone now. He dream-prayed he had died and gone to heaven, but he awoke to the same ordinary life, the drab apartment, a shift at the same greasy job, and another boring session after it with his therapist, the only person he ever said more to than, "Can I take your order, would you like fries with that?" A woman he would have sneered at, if not ignored, in his old life, and would again someday when his luck turned. Would he tell her about his dream? He decided he would. It seemed safe enough, wasn't about the past, the present, or even the future. It was just a dream. But was it? As his workday dragged on, the customers who filed into the restaurant looked at him, smiling with something more, it seemed to him, than mere pre-Christmas cheer. He began to wonder if the dream wasn't a message. Maybe his luck was about to turn. He'd paid his dues after all. That old feeling began to tingle again. By the time his 4 o'clock appointment with TJ, as he'd taken to calling her, even to her face, arrived, he'd decided he must keep the dream to himself until he knew more. He had to get through the session, get home, eat a little something, and take his sleeping pills. "You seem distracted today," TJ said late in the hour. "Something happened this week?" Same old, same crappy job, same crappy apartment. He shifted his gaze to the pressed board, "Believe" plaque near the window before she could read him, but she was astute, this small, tacky woman. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw her cock her head. "You're not complaining like you usually do. Did something change?" "Like I said, nope. Maybe I've adjusted to living in a shithole, I don't know." He attempted to give her an aw shucks grin, but felt his face contorting in weird ways, so he scrambled to throw her a bone. "Have I told you about my neighbors across the way?" He leaned back and sneered, coming up with an awful lie. "I'd swear to God she's killing him sometimes, and man, I wish she'd succeed so I can get some rest." "What do you think it means, Doc, that I don't care if he dies?" TJ sighed and drummed her red fingernails on her thigh. "It's Clauso 450, she said. "Let's just pick this up next week." Tilda. The dream started the same as before. Heavy, quotidian dread as he approached the stunted building, growing excitement and wonder as it opened to a Versailles-like hall of mirrors. But this time, the hall was filled with people, giant people. People twice his height, in silken 18th century finery, swirling and spinning around the room, wind-up dolls and white wigs with faces he recognized. His old clients, wealthy people he'd cheated and stolen from for years, people he'd fooled into being his friends, people from the life he wanted back desperately. He tried to speak, to get their attention, but nothing came, not even air. As he watched, the dancers grew larger. Wait, no, he grew smaller. He was shrinking, becoming more and more insignificant. An insect, a speck, dirt. He would always be dirt. Tilda. He stumbled through the rest of the week, his nights vast and dreamless. TJ seemed surprised to see him in the waiting room early but said nothing. He sat on her couch, cleared his throat. "I had this dream," he said, "that my building became a palace, but one I will never have access to again." His voice shook. She handed him the tissue box. "Yes." He gave her a brief description of the dream. "What do you think it means?" she asked. "Isn't that your job?" "No," she said simply, and crossed her arms, waiting. "I guess. I don't think I'll ever again have the life I had before." "I don't think," he said, swallowed. "I deserve it." "No," she said again, not clarifying what she meant, which oddly made him feel more respect for her. "So, what now?" "That's up to you." "Well, a hint might be nice," he whispered, wanting to scream. He swallowed. "You are my damn therapist after all." "Okay. What do you miss most about your old life?" "Not from in here." She tapped her head. "Not ego. From here." She tapped her chest. "Heart. What do you really miss?" He shook his head. "I don't know. Without those things on the table, nothing. I mean, I don't have kids. My ex-wife was a money-grubbing bitch, and my friends... Shit, I didn't really have those. Maybe luck. But that's not what you mean either. I know what you're getting at, but you're barking up the wrong tree." She smiled, the first full smile he'd seen from her since they'd met, before she'd gotten to know him. "I don't think so. I think you're getting somewhere." Maybe your dream was telling you more than you think. Like I've said before, dig deeper, go further. The answers are there, inside that building and inside you. He choked back a snarky, whatever, Obi-Wan, and nodded at her. Glancing at the clock above the door, he stood, smoothing his sweaty palms against his jeans. Hold on. She held up a finger and smiled again. I have something for you. He stared, not comprehending. She turned to fish something out of a paper bag, then turned back, holding out a flat package wrapped in green tissue paper and red curly ribbon. Of course, Christmas was only 4 days away. He stammered, cheeks reddening. I didn't get you anything. He didn't know why he was embarrassed, which only made him blush harder. She laughed. I was not expecting you to. Don't worry about it, it's no big deal. Merry Christmas. Merry, yeah, he said, looking down at his name. Jeb, in black marker on the paper, an inexpertly drawn holly leaf and berries below it. A feeling spread, not altogether unpleasant, replacing ungenerous thoughts about the cheesy gift she'd likely procured at TJ Maxx. Thank you, Geraldine, he mumbled and bumbled out the door. Tilda. He worked Christmas Eve day, took the bus, and trudged home as the sun set again too early, the day again too short, carrying his fast food dinner and the bottle of California Pinot Noir he'd splurged on. It was only 4, but it felt like midnight, and his near unfurnished apartment felt more featureless and tired and depressing than prison ever had been. Because it was his choice to leave it so, he realized. He had nowhere else to go, so he busied himself with eating and drinking, the food cold and congealed, and the wine's mediocrity disappointing. Folding up the empty, redolent burger paper and fries box, he glanced at the present Geraldine had given him, still unopened on the kitchen counter. He wasn't sure whether he'd saved it because it was his only gift, or because he didn't really care about it. Either way, he might as well open it now. He washed his greasy hands in the kitchen sink and poured another glass of wine. He picked up the gift and carefully untied the red ribbon, did his best not to tear the green paper as he picked at the tape, then slid the paper away. Not a tacky nothing after all, but a green, leather-bound book, like the ones his ex-wife had bought by the shelf-load from antiquaries to decorate their homes, curated for color and size rather than content. But this wasn't inert decoration. It was chosen for him to read. He snorted. Crime and punishment. He knew the gist of the story, though he suspected he'd have to read it to get the nuances she intended. Funny, he found himself looking forward to it. His doorbell rang, book in hand, still smiling with surprised respect for Geraldine. He answered the door to find the frazzled woman from across the hall. Hi, Jeb, right? Her grin was crooked, a little shy, infectious. He nodded, and she said, Marissa, you never responded to our invite to dinner for tomorrow evening. Can you make it? We'd be glad to have you. We're making turkey with all the fixings. A couple other neighbors are coming. He considered this only a moment, tasting the oily coating of his pitiful dinner as he licked his lips. You know what? Yes, Marissa. I'd be honored. Can I bring anything? Just yourself. She grinned again. 6 o'clock sharp, if that's okay, because of the Munchkins' early bedtime. Sure, he said, finding himself grinning in response. 6. Great. She glanced at his book, then inside the doorway at his near-bare apartment. Looks like a bookshelf is in order, huh? Maybe even a sofa. She laughed. He couldn't help but laugh with her. Yes, he said. It's time. Again, that soft, warm lightness pushing out something hard and heavy he hadn't even known was there. What was it? Only later, while lying on his second-hand mattress on the floor, After he'd read the long first part of the leather-bound book about young, impoverished Raskolnikov scheming and rationalizing his decision to murder a pawnbroker for her money, did it come to him. Like Raskolnikov, he'd lost something along the way, something essential and tender that had shriveled to a hard stone inside him once he began to drip Ponzi scheme money. Something poor little rich girl Marie Antoinette likely never knew her entire tragic gold-plated life. That night he dreamt again, a simple dream. The Marie Antoinette apartments remained an ugly pedestrian building, but he entered with lightness, that warmth down to his bones. He greeted neighbors in the lobby by name, delivered groceries to the housebound old lady down the hall, went into his simply but warmly furnished apartment to make himself a nourishing meal. Christmas morning, he leapt out of bed. If he was lucky, he might find gifts for the children across the hall before noon. Found you. Grandma is dying, but she has lived a long and good life. At the age of 97, she was in remarkably good shape until a cancer diagnosis 3 months ago. She made it clear from the start that she didn't want to fight it. No chemo, no radiation, no surgeries. Just keep me comfortable and let me die in my own home, was all she asked. My sister, Lori, and I were supposed to be taking turns staying with her in her house, but Lori works a lot. I am basically staying here full time. Fortunately, my job is a remote research position. Grandma was skeptical when I told her that I could work from home, or from her house, or wherever I happened to be. For her, a job is a place to go every day, not something you can do just by opening up your laptop. I set up a makeshift office at her dining room table. After working in silence for a few hours, I decide to check on Grandma. Sure enough, she is asleep in her room. I have noticed that she is sleeping more and has more episodes of confusion. Hospice comes by once a day to check her vitals, see if she needs more meds, and let us know how she is doing. I begin to think about my grandma's life, the life that is about to end. I need to think about that, about the obituary anyway. I begin making some notes. Born Annie Lee Morton in 1928 to Deborah and Leroy Morton, she grew up in Smith County. At the age of 16, she got a job at the snack counter of the old Songbird drugstore. It was there she met John Joseph Lane, or Jojo as everyone called him. They married in 1950 and welcomed a son in 1955. Mrs. Lane went on to move to Livingston. She began a job with the Renault Insurance Agency as a secretary in 1964, where she worked until her retirement in 2002. In her retirement, Mrs. Lane remained active with the local theater, as a library volunteer, and with local charities. Many in the community remember her warmly. She was preceded in death by her son, Jacob Lane, several years ago. She is survived by his daughters, Lori and Maddie Lane. I stare at the notes in front of me. I can't believe that is all there is. After 97 years, there should be more. I look out the window. The backyard is filled with dry brown leaves. My grandmother always kept everything so tidy, and the yard was no exception. Until the cancer, she raked those leaves herself. If she looks out her bedroom window, she will see how neglected the yard is, I think. I retrieve the rake from the backyard shed, and I think about the short obituary. The truth is that Grandma's life had one big black hole. It was the void left by her husband and my grandfather, John Joseph Lane, or Jojo as everyone called him. My dad died in a car accident when I was 9. I then developed a burning curiosity to find out everything about his life and his family. My mother had packed away most of my father's things. I looked through them and found them lacking in giving me any clue about who he really was. So, when I spent time with my grandma, I looked to her for information. I rummaged through my father's old room, and that was where I first found pictures of my dad's father, Jojo. Grandma always spoke highly of Jojo. He was a good father, a good husband. They were in love and happy. My dad, as a boy, had adored Jojo. What happened to him? I remembered asking Grandma. Did he die? She was in her 70s then, but had the face of a younger woman. Her smile faded away, and her eyes became serious. He left one day, she said. But where did he go? I pressed on. At the age of 9, I didn't understand the concept of separation, abandonment, or heartbreak. I don't know, honey. You see, he had lost his job, and we were struggling, she explained. Sometimes, I think he just, maybe went off somewhere and decided to disappear. I remember being shocked and horrified at the prospect. As a child, I didn't know that people could just vanish, except for kids who were stolen. But adults, never were they supposed to disappear. After that, I never asked any more pointed questions about Jojo, but sometimes Grandma would make a remark that would give me a snippet of information. His favorite meal was meatloaf with mashed potatoes, peas, and yeast rolls. He was a good dancer. When my grandma was pregnant, Jojo knew it was going to be a boy. He was so excited to have a son. Then he left when my dad was 8 years old. It made no sense. I had asked my mom about the whole situation later on. She just shrugged. According to my dad, he fell asleep one night, and the next morning Jojo was gone. I think of this as I rake the leaves into piles. I start at the perimeter of the yard, and I am working my way to the center. I am out of shape, and am starting to sweat in spite of the cool temperature. One last drag of the rake across the ground, and I am going to go in and rest. I cannot believe my 97-year-old grandmother raked these leaves. My thoughts are interrupted when I realize that the rake is stuck on something. I can't seem to pull it toward me, so I lift it up, and that is when I see that the rake is tangled with a leather strap. Bending down, pushing the leaves and grass away, I realize that the strap is connected to something that is buried. I pull harder on the strap, and I feel something give way, but it is deep. Retrieving a small garden trowel from the shed, I dig until I can make out the top of a leather bag. After a few minutes of pulling and digging, I get the item out. It is an old leather purse, stiff, scratched and caked with mud. The clasp on top is an old clasp, the kind with two metal pieces that wrap around each other and make a snap sound when they are forced closed. It is rusty, but after some effort, I manage to pry the purse open. Looking down into the black plastic lining, I see that the purse is empty, except for a bundle wrapped in wax paper. The paper is brittle when I unfold it. Inside, I find a large brown stained envelope, and within it another smaller envelope. I open it to find even more wax paper, and finally a thick bundle of folded notebook paper tied with string. I untie the string and open the paper. It seems to be a letter of some kind. The first page has only one sentence. "Dear Jojo, I am so sorry," is written in my grandma's precise cursive script. At that moment, I hear a car pull into the driveway in front of the house. The hospice aide is here. I feel panicked. I go into the house, stopping in the kitchen. For some reason, I feel as if no one should see me with these papers. I tuck everything underneath the kitchen sink before I open the front door to greet the hospice aide. Grandma wakes when we enter her bedroom. She is confused when she sees the aide put the blood pressure cuff around her upper arm. "What are you doing?" she snaps at the aide. The aide's name tag says Lavana. She smiles at my grandma. "I'm just checking on you, Miss Lane, just kicking the tires and looking under the hood." My grandma laughs. "I think my transmission is going," she says. We all laugh. "Maybe so, but your motor is still running, Grandma," I tell her. After Lavana has left, I put on the kettle and take some warm chamomile tea up to the bedroom, but Grandma has already gone back to sleep. It won't be long now, I think. I pull the papers out from under the sink. I look at that first page again. "Dear Jojo, I am so sorry." I flip to the page to read on. My grandmother's handwriting was unmistakable. Date: Monday, November 25th, 1963. Jojo, you are gone. I know where you are, and I cannot tell anyone, and I cannot keep it in. So I will tell the pages. Only the pages will know. I will write this. I will bury it deep, deep in the ground, deep in me. Jojo lost his job 3 months ago. He was working for Wilhelm's Furniture. He had been there for years. But then the owner died and the place shut down, laid everyone off. At first, we weren't worried. But then, when Jojo started trying to find work, he couldn't. No one was hiring. Not the factories, not the stores. Then, we got behind on rent. The landlord said he would work with us, but then the gas bill went unpaid and got turned off. It was getting colder. I dressed in layers. I dressed our boy in layers. I scraped together meals of salt and pepper and butter and rice. Finally, we got into a fight. I told Jojo. He was no kind of man, no kind of father, that couldn't even feed his child, couldn't even keep him warm. Jojo, I will never forget your face when you left that night. I looked up for a moment. So there had been an argument, but that hardly explained the fact that Jojo was never seen or heard from again. I flipped to the third page, hoping to find answers. Grandma had written this page later. Date: Wednesday, November 26th, 1963. Jojo, you came back. You left, but you came back, and you had money. A big wad of cash. It looked funny. It was smeared with something, and then I realized that it was blood, and you were bleeding from your side, but you said it was nothing. You told me to hide the money, use a bit of it to buy food and pay the gas bill and rent, but hide the rest. Then you said you had to leave. Jojo, you said you were going to go to our cave, the one we used to go to when we were courting. You would be back in a few days. If anyone asked, I was to say that you were out of town, looking for work, and that you would be back, but you never came back. Within the handwritten pages was a newspaper clipping. It was about a robbery of a tavern 2 counties away. I read the clipping carefully, suspecting what it had to do with Jojo. The headline was big and bold in all capital letters. Robbery gone wrong. 1 dead, money missing. Officials are still trying to piece together what happened at Big Al's Tavern on the night of November 23rd, 1963. The tavern was reportedly not very busy, and the last customer who left at midnight reported seeing the owner, Al Harvey, cleaning the counter as he usually did at closing time. The next morning, Big Al would be dead on the floor of the tavern, and a trail of blood led out the door. Unfortunately, it was impossible to track further because of heavy rain during the night and early morning hours. Eyewitness accounts state that a man in a red-checked shirt was seen running into the woods behind the tavern. So Jojo, desperate to provide for his family, had committed a robbery. It was almost heroic, but I couldn't push away the grim thought that he had somehow killed a man in the process. Looking down into the bundle of paper, I see another newspaper clipping. Big Al put up a fight. Sheriff Ernest Glenn stated in an interview that officers have been able to figure out what probably happened during the robbery at Big Al's Tavern on the fateful night of November 23rd, just one day after the assassination of our president. While the nation was in mourning, someone entered Big Al's just after closing to rob the tavern. Big Al was no pushover, however, and had other plans for the perpetrator. From the amount of blood spilled, it looked as if the unknown assailant was stabbed deeply, at least once. Unfortunately, Big Al was injured during the struggle and died of a head injury sustained when fell and hit the wooden bar top on the way down. Sheriff Glenn made this statement: "Wherever the assailant is, he will be looking for a hospital. He is going to have to get patched up somewhere. We will find him. It doesn't matter if Al died from the fall. We will be looking at murder charges." The next page was dated Friday, December 6th, 1963. It was written in Grandma's handwriting. "Dear Jojo, I went to the cave. I know you told me to wait, but I went to the cave where we used to go, where we spent so many hours talking with each other, loving each other. I found you there, my darling. At first I was relieved to see you, sitting against the wall. Then I saw the blood that had poured out of you, your eyes unseeing, your skin marble cold, and there you were in front of me, and gone at the same time. I will tell no one. I love you, and I will tell no one what you did or where you are. Goodbye, my love." After that, she had written one more thing: $5,576. I guess that must have been how much Jojo had gotten from the robbery. I was stunned. It was all here, the solution to our family mystery. Jojo had committed a robbery to keep his family fed and warm. A fight between him and owner of the business ensued. Jojo was seriously injured. The other man was killed in the struggle. Jojo managed to make it home, give Grandma the money, and take refuge in a cave, where he died of his injuries. Upstairs, I hear my grandma stirring. I hide the papers underneath the couch cushion and run upstairs. She is out of bed and so confused. I need to get to work, she tells me. "Where?" I ask. She is impatient with me. "The drugstore, silly. Who are you anyway?" "I'm your granddaughter, Maddie," I answer. She laughs. "I don't have a granddaughter. I'm only 18. I realize that her mind is somewhere back in time, before the tragedy of Jojo. "Do you have a boyfriend?" I ask slyly. Grandma smiles again. "His name is Jojo. He is so handsome. He takes me courting in the cave behind the old Myers farm sometimes. We can be alone there." Then the smile fades. "Where am I?" she asks. I tell her she is home and I help her back to the bed. That is the last time she speaks. Grandma dies the next night. I hide the letters at my own apartment and never tell anyone about them. It took me a few days looking through old property records to figure out where the old Myers farm had been. A mall sits there now, but it is long since closed and abandoned. The woods behind it are still intact. I waited for the weather to warm up and decided to hike out there. I found the cave. There was graffiti and a bit of trash near the entrance. Inside, it was dark and cool. It went deep into the side of the mountain. I had brought a long spool of fishing line, attached it to a tree outside, and unwound it as I walked deeper into the dark abyss. I didn't know how big it was, and I didn't want to lose my way. I moved my flashlight through the dark, and when I saw nothing, I kept walking. Then I noticed a shaft of sunlight coming through a crack in the rocks. I walked toward this light and found myself in a separate chamber. At first, I thought it was empty too. Then I spotted the still human figure sitting propped against a large boulder. The bones of Jojo Lane still sit. He still wears the black cowboy boots, the blue jeans, and red-checked button-up shirt he put on one morning in November of 1963. The skull grins and a skeletal hand is reaching out toward me. I kneel and look at the empty eye sockets. "Found you," I say. Jojo doesn't reply. I sit with my grandfather for a while. The cave is still. The sunlight begins to fade. I reach over to hold the skeletal hand. I think long and hard what to do. Should I alert the police? Should I make an anonymous report? Should I tell my sister and my mom? Then I realize I don't have to decide today. He has been here for decades. A few more years won't hurt. I will leave him alone for now. As I rise from the floor of the cave, I can almost feel him looking at me. I turn around, half expecting him to animate, to tell me not to go yet. The skeleton still sits, expecting nothing, asking nothing. I tell Jojo goodbye and turn to follow my fishing line through the dark cave and back into the present, leaving Jojo to sit where the past had left him, the Breakfast Murder Club. A hush fell upon the gathering at the large clover-shaped mansion that Lucky the Lucky Charms leprechaun lived in. The guests looked in horror and sadness as they saw the body of the effusive leprechaun floating in the large clover-shaped pool that was located in the courtyard of the luxurious estate. Tony the Tiger, Toucan Sam, Count Chocula, Frankenberry, Buzz the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee, and Snap, Crackle, and Pop all stood silently staring at the corpse. While their first impulse was to consider it an accidental death by drowning, something about the mangled nature of the body didn't add up. Casting even further doubt on the death by drowning theory was the large metal blade protruding from Lucky's back, with blood flowing freely out of the wound and into the pool water. After a long and agonizing silence, Buzz was the first to speak. "Looks like we got ourselves a serial killer on our hands," he giggled. "Buzz, that's not fucking funny," Crackle yelled at the floating bee. "We have to figure out who did this." "Can we make sure he's really dead?" Snap inquired. "I mean, we don't know for sure, do we?" "I don't think he's alive." Toucan Sam flew over the pool to examine the corpse from above. "He's not breathing." He flew back to his room and retrieved a large life preserver shaped like a red Fruit Loop, then tossed it into the pool next to Lucky. But there was no movement from the leprechaun. "Come on, Lucky." The body still did not stir. "He's dead," Tony lamented. "But who would want to kill Lucky?" Count Chocula asked. "Lucky didn't have an enemy in the world." "Well, that's not totally true." Pop shook his head. "I can think of a few people who would have wanted to do away with Lucky." "Like who?" Frankenberry asked as he retrieved a pool skimmer and attempted to push Lucky's body toward the side of the pool for retrieval. "Well, for starters, how about his children? Lucky had quite an estate and lots of estranged children thanks to his fondness for Irish hookers. Those kids always chasing him in the commercials? They were his own offspring. They were always after his lucky child support payments." "Yes, Lucky was loaded," Buzz blurted out. "He had it all. Cash, stocks and bonds, Bitcoin and doubloons, pots of gold, Swiss bank accounts, and real estate investment boons." "But I didn't see any kids come into this house today," Sam interjected. "Or anyone else for that matter." He paused. "Let's face it, one of us is the killer." The rest of the mascots stood silent for a moment. Finally, Snap ventured a comment. "So, which one of us would have had a motive to kill Lucky? We were all his friends, his most trusted buddies. We've all been through thick and thin together. Whether we work for Kellogg's or General Mills, we've all had the same goal of selling the world's children onto delicious, sugary cereal. so they don't end up with that bland, nutritious oatmeal their parents want them to eat. How could any of us stoop to something like this? Well, there's one mascot here I think could have done this, Sam proposed. He pointed at the Frosted Flakes guru. Tony. He's had it in for the beloved leprechaun for a long time. Hey, I wouldn't kill anybody, Tony protested. Oh, you wouldn't. Frankenberry sneered at the large cartoon tiger. Like you didn't make your displeasure known about Lucky's Asian safaris that you claim are decimating your kind, especially with your criminal history. Remember all those game hunters they found outside your house? Those maulings were expunged from my record. Tony frantically tried to steer the accusations elsewhere. It was probably the Toucanon who did it. That's right, Buzz agreed. Remember, Sam, how you threatened Lucky on social media and you had to put out a public apology before Kellogg's would let you appear in commercials again? Sam leapt to his own defense. Well, he was nasty to me too. He said that Fruit Loops were nothing more than gay Cheerios. He should have been kicked off of Twitter too. He's guilty, Tony exclaimed as the other mascots took a harsh eye to the toucan. Tony, Pop yelled at the tiger. This isn't one of your stupid commercials. Why do you always talk like that? I had a stroke, Tony declared. This is a total witch hunt, Sam screamed. If I killed Lucky, you think I'd just leave his body in the pool for everyone to find? I'm a fucking bird. I could easily take him anywhere to dispose of the evidence. He looked around at his accusers. It was probably Chocula. Lucky had the goods on him, and the Count knew it. The crowd gasped, turning to the chocolatey vampire, who backed away slowly from all of them, except for his ward, Frankenberry. I don't know what you're talking about. I did not do anything. Lucky did not have anything on me. Oh yeah? Sam sneered at the Count. You knew that Lucky knew about your holdings in cocoa production companies operating in West Africa. Lucky knew that you were profiteering from child slave labor, using children to produce the chocolate used in your cereal. He was going to go to the papers about it, and he also knew about your little dalliances with European figures of royalty and your alleged ties to murderous East European strongmen like Vlad the Impaler and Ivan the Terrible. But what really made Lucky decide to come clean with everything he knew about you was a laptop he found in your castle, proving your involvement with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You, sir, have a long and very bloody history, and Lucky was about to blow it all up for the world to see. That is why you killed him. You seriously did all of that? Snap gaped at Chocula. You should take a good hard look in whatever it is you vampires use instead of a mirror. I did not kill Lucky, the Count vigorously declared. And all that stuff is also a lie. Lucky vanted to frame me because Iva's always his biggest competition for cereals with marshmallows shaped like weird crap in them. I think we need to examine where the three little elves stand with all this, Frankenberry said. Snap, crackle, and pop. Maybe one of you snapped, then another one of you cackled, and then the third of you popped. Okay, what's our motive? Pop asked belligerently. Lucky and us go back many years. Us little guys gotta stick together, you know? Like you never had it in for the little leprechaun who works for your rival company. Buzz buzzed. He always beat you in the little people's competitions at the breakfast conventions. Plus, his cereal always did better with children aged 6 to 18, especially in those from wealthier households. Snap sniffled. Yes, he was our whimsical little rival. But that doesn't mean any of us would kill him. If it was anybody here who did it, it was probably the pink monstrosity standing over there. Frankenberry frowned as the crowd turned in his direction. Me? Screw you, you little elf. I would never kill Lucky. Oh, yeah? Snap asserted. Like you never got into Lucky's face about all the rumors he spread about you, about the name of your cereal meaning it contained genetically modified berries. Frankenberry shook his head sadly. Yeah, I guess it did hit me below the belt when he told people that. My sales went down over 20% because of him. Also, Lucky did sleep with your wife, Jocular added. She said sex with me was like sleeping with a corpse, Frankenberry cried. Well, I can't help that. I'm made of corpses. The hell was she doing with that little Irish runt anyway? His pecker is probably the size of a matchstick. Whoa, I think we best move on, Sam suggested. Wait a minute. We never talked about Buzz. Our flying friend here had a very good motive to off our beloved leprechaun. Okay, I see where this is going, but I am not the killer, Buzz screamed. Yes, Lucky interfered with my efforts to spread awareness of the threat to honeybees. He'd go around saying horrible things about my people, that we're all dangerous, invasive species who sting people for fun. He kept showing everyone that damn Wu-Tang Clan video where the killer bees attack New York. He even tried to convince Michael Bay to produce an action or horror movie called Night of the Bumblebees, all because my cereal beats his among the 18 to 34 female demographic. That's not the only reason, Sam insisted. It's well known in the industry that Lucky also encouraged the worker bees in your hives to unionize. Apparently, work conditions at your company are so bad that many of your employees have jumped ship to work for Amazon and Walmart. I mean, God forbid you provide your employees with full dental. What the hell do my bees need dental for? Buzz countered. They don't even have teeth. Okay, enough, Crackle yelled. This isn't getting us anywhere. It's clear that almost all of us had a motive to kill Lucky. But obviously only one of us actually did it. We have to start looking for clues. We need to check any video surveillance of the pool, examine Lucky's wounds, get an autopsy done, anything that might clue us in on how and when he died, and who was with him when he expired. No sooner did he finish talking than all the lights went out. The courtyard area was suddenly shrouded in darkness, with none of the mascots being able to see anything, despite some of them normally having excellent night vision. Then, only moments later, the lights came back on as quickly as they turned off. Everyone shrieked in horror as they saw Crackle laying on the ground, covered in blood and not moving. "Crackle!" Snap screamed. "Who did this to you?" "The killer has struck again!" Tony exclaimed. "We have to find out who did this," Toucan yelled. "Everyone, follow my nose and stick together." Suddenly, a voice was heard from inside the house. "Ahem, everyone. If you'll turn your attention to me, I think I know the solution to this perplexing mystery." The gathering turned their heads to see the newcomer, Captain Crunch, emerge from the mansion and into the pool yard. "Captain!" Pop cheered. "What are you doing here?" "I came here earlier, saw what happened, and have been investigating the house ever since," the captain chuckled. "I've become quite adept at sleuthing ever since my court-martial from the Navy forced me into early retirement." "So, who was the killer?" Frankenberry asked. "And was it the same person who murdered Crackle just now?" Crunch took a whiff from his pipe. "Just calm down, and I will explain everything. First, here is an explanation of how it might have happened." How it might have happened. "Tony did it," the captain announced, pointing at the shocked tiger in a fit of rage. Earlier today, he and Lucky were out by the poolside bar making chit-chat, and the conversation turned to health and nutrition. Tony repeatedly mocked the idea of marshmallows being considered a breakfast food, to to which Lucky stated that marshmallows may not be a nutritious food, but that Tony was an endangered species and his mother was a whore. Tony immediately and swiftly murdered Lucky, inserted a knife into the body, and threw it into the pool to cover up the telltale slash wounds, and then bribed Buzz to kill the power using his stinger so that he could make an escape under cover of darkness. But when everyone gathered at the pool instead, Buzz had to sneak away in order to cut the electricity. Tony then took advantage of the darkness to kill Crackle before the others could start searching and find out it was him who performed the dastardly deeds. "How dare you! It wasn't me!" Tony exclaimed. "Captain," Buzz belted out, "maybe you should stop with your bullshit detective work and go back to manning those glory holes, or whatever else it is you did that got you kicked out of the Navy." Captain Crunch was undeterred. "Those are the facts, I'm afraid. As ugly as they may be, we have a double murderer and an accomplice amongst us right now." "You both are going to jail for this," Snap cried in between shedding tears for his lost companion. "The hell I am," Tony snarled as he bore his fangs belligerently. "You real deed." He leapt up and pounced onto the ground, roaring and throwing his claws aggressively at the other mascots. "You don't want to mess with the eye of this tiger," Buzz declared as he pointed his stinger at the crowd and prepared to dive bomb into them. "'Cause believe me, you won't be a survivor." "Well, this is all a fun little romp," Captain Crunch announced, just as the fracas was about to go into full drive. "But it isn't actually how it happened. How about this? How about this?" "Toucan Sam is the culprit," Captain Crunch proclaimed once the mascots were all at his attention again. Lucky was about to publish a memoir detailing Sam's troubled history as a cocaine addict. Sam was afraid the revelation would cause parents to boycott Fruit Loops and tank sales of his product. So he waited until Lucky was alone in the pool yard and pecked him to death with that long, fruity beak of his. The rest of the mascots were shocked, but Sam did not attempt to deny the accusation. "Well, yes, Lucky did meet his end with me. But aren't you forgetting about your little part in this, oh Captain, my Captain?" When Captain Crunch did not respond, Sam was quick to continue. "When Captain Crunch arrived at the scene, I knew he would figure things out. So, I blackmailed him into covering up this crime by threatening to reveal to everyone his association with Jeffrey Epstein. So while we were all arguing back here, Crunch cut the power so that I could kill Crackle and take the heat off of myself for long enough to smuggle Lucky's body away from the house. But guess what, Captain? Our deal is off. You weren't supposed to reveal yourself in this manner, and now we're both fucked." "I too can. That is so," Captain Crunch proclaimed. "There is indeed a lesson in all this. Blackmail and hidden secrets are tempting to use, but are as dangerous to their wielders as they are to their targets. But do not despair, Toucan, for that is also not how it happened. Here is the real solution to this mystery." What really happened? "No one killed Lucky," the captain announced. "In the interval before his body was discovered by you all, I conducted a thorough examination. Though it may look like foul play, his death was actually caused by drowning as a result of acute alcohol poisoning, brought about by his ethnicity, as well as his despondency over losing yet another child paternity case, this time to a Brooklyn mother of 4. The rest of the serial mascots murmured. "But then why was the body still in the pool, with the knife in his back, when we found him?" Frankenberry asked. Suddenly Crackle rose to his feet, brushing himself off as he laughed. "Thank the captain's cunning for that one," he cackled as Captain Crunch glared at him with eyes wide open. "Crackle, what the hell, man? You totally stuck the knife in my back." Give it a rest, Cap. You did that yourself. Crackle started licking up the ketchup he had covered himself with as part of the ruse. After the autopsy, Captain Crunch put the knife in Lucky's back and threw it into the pool to make the scene look like murder, sullying the reputation of the other cereal mascots, enough to make people forget about his court-martial, which was hurting sales of Crunch Berries. I was in on the scheme as well, because he promised to help me convince the bigwigs at Kellogg's to bring back Rice Krispie Treats cereal, which we all know was the bomb. So I faked my death in order to make it look like a double homicide and allow Captain to declare himself a hero for solving the mystery. Plus, it would have allowed me to cash in on a very lucrative life insurance policy once I resurfaced under the brand name Rice Titties, the world's first pornographic cereal. Then why did you just blow it all right now? The captain seethed. You and I were gonna be rich beyond our wildest dreams. I had second thoughts lying down here just now. I realized that no one really wants boobs in their breakfast cereal. Crackle shrugged. So sue me. The rest of the mascots simply stood in silence for a moment. Captain Crunch decided to slip away quietly, to which no one else took notice. As the evening turned into full-on nighttime, they still stood in the pool yard without making a sound. Well, Buzz finally said, anyone want to go over to the Trix Rabbit's house? He texted me that he just made some brownies that are very much not for kids, Liability and Lingotto. When the police forcibly entered 43-year-old Paulina Fiore's apartment, they found her lifeless body on the floor of the kitchen, covered in mysterious bruises. The lead detective immediately suspected homicide and ordered an autopsy. But after extensive analysis, the coroner concluded the cause of death was vitamin C deficiency. In a video appearing on social media, Stephanie Brolo, who sources confirm is a close friend of Paulina, is seen weeping and uttering, "This is all my fault." At the offices of my city's largest newspaper, I sip my third espresso of the morning and finish writing the story. 1 coffee per story is a good rule to live by. I wish I could teach this to new journalists, but they have their own ways of doing things. After I finish my third random fatality write-up of the morning, I announce, I'm sick of tabloid journalism, to the newsroom, to no one in particular. The young writers around me ignore me. In the economic downturn in traditional media, they are happy to simply hold a job. Giuseppe, our new chief editor, says articles with a topic of either sex or death receive 10 times more clicks than any other. The editorial concepts in his head are as blunt as the sales method of a fish seller in the market. I need to endure another month of ambulance chasing until I can focus on another piece of investigative journalism. My lengthy expose of government corruption last month, which filled half the front page of the print edition, received fewer views online than a weekend car crash or a nightclub brawl. Max? Giuseppe is standing in front of my desk. Why haven't you interviewed the friend yet? Friend? Friend of whom? Idiot. The "it's all my fault" friend. Young, attractive, trending online. Giuseppe says this with his voice rising in volume for each word. Stephanie Brolo. I show Giuseppe my memory, for detail is flawless. I didn't study political science to chase after friends of murder victims and suicides. Do it. He turns around and stomps off. Halfway across the newsroom, he turns back and shouts, Vitamin C. Focus on the vitamin C. Nutrition stories are good for our advertisers, Max. Several reporters type notes into their mobiles. Even an untrained eye can foresee them proposing all types of vitamin stories in tomorrow's news meeting. I dial the friend. This is Max Serafino. Is this Bianca? Yes, a female voice says, and hesitates. Are you with the police? Number I'm with the... I say the name of the newspaper. With a 137-year history, the name often opens doors. I thought the police would be the first to call. What do you want? The police in Italy would never bother with something as trivial as a comment on social media, unless a politician or celebrity was involved. I'd like to clarify what you said in the viral video on Italia app. I mention Italy's largest social media app. That video is ruining my life, Bianca says. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, everyone misunderstood what I said. I didn't have anything to do with Paulina's death. She stopped going out and looked thinner 6 months ago. Maybe I started her in this direction. She catches her breath. I only called her twice after she stopped seeing me. I should have tried harder, gone to her home. Yes? It's all too much, she says. Thanks for calling me, but sorry. I don't know who you are. Abruptly, the mobile screen turns red. She disconnects the WhatsApp call and goes offline. Good work on the Paulina interview. Giuseppe reaches over and picks up one of my antique pencils and massages it between his fingers. No problem, boss. I managed to knit the meager information I was given into a piece about a heartbroken friend and a substantial essay about eating disorders. Nice pencil. He studies the Castelli wooden pencil quixotically. Max, you are 10 years too old for this newsroom, but you are a cat that always lands on its feet. The Tiger of Turin, I propose. I'll accept that as a byline. An important sounding moniker is the best I can hope for these days. I recall the Elysian days of being flown to Rome to interview government ministers, back when traditional newspapers collected all the advertising revenue instead of Google. When assigned a story, one of the first duties a beat reporter checks off is to contact the family members. I locate Paulina's father on social media and send an introduction. This is Max Serafino, a reporter with the Turin Register. I'm writing an article about the unfortunate incident with your daughter and would like to ensure I have all details correct. Please contact me at your earliest convenience. I receive a reply, which appears to be copied and pasted. We have nothing to say. Do not contact us again. The Fiore family. I move on to another breaking story, and the Paulina story goes quiet in the newsroom of the Turin Register for several days. Max, line 7! Someone shouts. I answer. City desk, Max Serafino. This is Paulina Fiore's father, a man says. Our daughter. It's all our fault. We saw how much time she was spending on her mobile and never stopped her. I'm sure it's not your fault, but I would like to hear more, I say. Is there a reason you decided to call me today? The police unlocked her phone and asked us questions about the websites she was looking at. Do you remember any of the names? I don't know. I've never heard of any of them, he said. But most of the articles were about diseases. Was she in contact with anyone? They did say she received the links from friends on the Italia app. Judging by reports from neighbors, Paulina has not been outside for months. The friends must be online ones. I call Professor Rizzo at the University of Turin. Could fear about disease, viruses, and bacteria, and so on, cause a patient to suffer from malnutrition? I ask. Mysophobia, commonly called germophobia, can cause a patient to avoid touching food, to eat with gloves, that sort of thing. In problem cases, it may cause patients to limit social interaction and avoid public places. Paulina appeared to be living on a diet of boiled pasta. That sounds possible, but I've never heard of malnutrition even in the most extreme cases of mysophobia. Hunger, including a desire for a mixed diet, is stronger than almost any other psychological urge. But isn't the urge to survive even stronger? I conjecture, trying to imagine what the existential threat could be. How could Paulina completely avoid something so widespread as vitamin C? I update the chief editor on my progress on the case. This has the workings of a good human interest story: food, fear, a female victim. Giuseppe looks satisfied. Keep digging, but steer clear from anything negative about Italia app. They deliver 30% of our incoming traffic. I am on speaking terms with many people in our city. People love to talk about themselves to someone who is actively listening, especially if they perceive them to be in a position of authority. After graduating university together, Bruno went on a different, more international path than I. Having worked for 15 years in Silicon Valley, he returned to our hometown and was soon snapped up by Italy's largest social media company. A glimpse at a life I could have lived. I canceled dinner with my girlfriend Gabriel to set up a cozy dinner with a 41-year-old man. On a clear, dry evening as dusk descends over Turin, as it sits in its valley between the towering Italian Alps on one side and the rolling hills that rise up from the Po River on the other, I walk toward the rectangular bulk of iron lattice that is the old Fiat factory in Lingotto on the south side of the city. The factory, almost a kilometer long, has transformed into offices and a ground floor shopping mall. Now it's popular with high-tech startups, many from America, France, and Germany. The building that was the epicenter of the city when Turin produced half the automobiles of Europe is now filled with people trying to figure out how to sell discount handbags through e-commerce. At least the people of Turin are no longer destined for a life of hard labor as previous generations were. Paulina lived not far from this building. At the Osteria del Fiat, I've asked for a quiet table. I'm disappointed when the host leads us to a very crowded dining room. We pass a large room with only one table of guests. In the circle of suited men, I recognize a retired local politician. In the dark recesses of the city, the power brokers don't like to be overheard. An hour later, after we have finished our own dinner, Bruno takes a large swig of the dolcetto d'alba we have been drinking. The obligatory pleasantries and the exchange of information about shared friends has been completed, and we can move on to the real meat of the dinner. I explain how Paulina had been accessing his employer's app over 50 times a day. At Italia app, we focus on returning traffic. Some readers we enchant with glamour, others we addict with fear. Isn't that manipulation? We are giving people what they want. If they want to hate, they will find it. If they want to love, they will find that too. What about promoting democracy and humanitarian values? That's just rhetoric for university students. You know that. Paulina Fiore died after gorging on fake news sent to her by Italia app. It's not our fault that someone can't handle online news. If we don't send it to them, someone else will. You have become very American in your thinking, I point out. It's disappointing my old friend can't see the world the same way we used to, but I've become resigned to accept people's differences, politically or otherwise. The police seem very interested in her social media history, I add. Bruno looks at me with renewed interest. Have the police opened an investigation? Maybe her death is not Italia app's fault. Maybe it's the people who write the fake news. If you can send me her browsing history, the one the police are going through, I'll take a look and put some spotlight on the fake news producers. That might keep you one step ahead in reacting to negative coverage. I'll keep your name out of it, of course. I'll think about it. Bruno focuses on his red wine glass. Bruno and I may not see eye to eye, but we have enough shared history to trust we will protect each other's best interests. The next afternoon, I receive Paulina's browsing history via an encrypted messaging app. I start clicking through the links. Italy's continuing flood of illegal immigrants. How COVID rises up through ventilation shafts. The 7 ways elevator buttons spread disease. Paparazzi capture pictures of Italy's first monkeypox patient. Vegetables in our supermarkets picked by immigrants inundated with monkeypox virus. I scan through months of links about deadly diseases and ways to avoid them. Fake news is a problem, and the government has been trying to combat it. In the thousands of links I scan through, my heart flutters as I spot our name. Don't trust what the government says about monkeypox. See attached articles from the Turin Register. Clicking the link, I see a list of familiar headlines. The dark hand behind the government reshuffle. Max Serafino. Patient malpractice allegations covered up by health authorities. Max Serafino. Pandemic recommendations. Misguided. Max Serafino. Corruption exposed in Turin government. Max Serafino. Other articles Paulina was reading, those not to trust doctors and government health advice, often linked to articles written by me and my colleagues. I stare at the pencil that sits on my desk where Giuseppe left it earlier. Behind me, I hear someone approach and feel their hands on my shoulders. Giuseppe's voice says, "And you thought you were superior to all of us, didn't you?" Is it all? I am about to ask an obvious question, but stop myself. I have bills to pay and a scarcity of other work alternatives. I sweep pointless self-doubt from my mind. Journalists report the news. We do not generate it. With a click of the mouse, I bring up today's police bulletin and make proposals on which events we might cover for our prestigious 137-year-old newspaper to the chief editor. The next morning, a young journalist who normally sits beside me struts triumphantly through the newsroom greeting colleagues. Giuseppe gives him a thumbs up. I open the Turin Register's most viewed list, an online article. Clickbait news causes scurvy in Italy's auto capital is trending across the nation. I begin having regular dinners with Bruno. We talk about our old adventures in school and about the state of the country. Bruno reminds me that a political science professor in university had taught us, every industry is selling a product, and at its core, the news industry sells fear. In the coming months, the number of cases of malnutrition, similar to Paulina's snowball across the nation. I notice Bruno starts to eat more and more. I have lost my appetite. The Dark Files of Lazarus, case number 13. Lazarus, the city built upon the ashes of Los Angeles, has irony in mounds as high as the carbon steel coins piling up in the newly formed vaults. Theo Baxton was the 13th child born into this city after its establishment. Blessed at birth, cursed at life. Again, the irony piles on. Superstitions aside, young Theo had the average childhood of those in the city. A busy father, a mother who stayed at home making a side business for her personal hobbies, schools located on the outskirts as a means to accommodate all from different walks of life, rival gangs that start between said schools and end up either inside of the city or inside the ground. Theo was no exception. He was branded to the Cater Kings, a gang that sought to make money between other gangs as an intermediate and peacekeeping family. Fees were issued to them to end turf wars before they started, a fair sum of carbon steel coins and fruit seeds that could also be traded in for food and weaponry. Young Theo was trained as the accountant of the group, having excelled in his classes of mathematics. In fact, given his devotion to the numbers, he was also allowed to freelance between the gangs. Word would spread throughout Lazarus of the boy genius with a fist in fights and a hand in banks, and he had his own office flat amongst the perks of a local celebrity. This climb would continue for 3 years until the peace was finally shattered. A third world war was an ongoing rumor even in this decade, but the threat of such was a temptation that could no longer be ignored. The federal government, trying to keep its iron hand upon the nation's throat. At the same time, groups of states were seceding from the Union, starting with Texas and Florida. California was arguing its points to secede despite being government central for years. Tensions were high everywhere, and all it would take was one little push. According to an associate of Theo, who wished to remain anonymous, a letter with no return address and a waxed seal pressed with an emblem of a serpent eating its own tail. Inside, Theo told his associate that it was from someone named Enzo, asking for help to what was described as a complicated accounting error. Despite Theo's policy to only work with people within the city, the letter promised a large reward, $50 million in carbon steel, with an extra $5 million sent to him as an incentive. All he had to do was leave his answer outside of his door by the second day of receiving the letter. The answer was yes. On the fourth day, the associate stated that a large sum of carbon steel was made to Theo's personal vault. The bankers, however, refused to divulge information at the time according to their privacy policies, and insisted that since no amount of money was stolen or missing, that this was just another paycheck for Mr. Baxton. Come the afternoon, a large box was delivered to Theo's office, containing paperwork and USBs pertaining to the error mentioned in the letter from Enzo. Theo did examinations and cross-examinations, contacted different businesses, and even got in touch with several tax collectors. Apparently, several different accounts belonging to key figures within the city gangs were seized, and the paperwork of each were sent to the wrong people in authority, all of which were dismissed under negligence. Now, no longer needing any trials, the figures could get their money back, but the public servants refused to be involved with the returns. Instead, Theo was contacted as a representative of the Cater Kings to oversee the return of the physical funds. The associate then told of what happened over the next few weeks. Delivery trucks containing wooden boxes of the promised funds were driven to the outskirts of Lazarus, where the gangs of the prominent figureheads awaited to take to the vaults personally. The associate noted two things that were strange. All the truck drivers wore masks, and all the boxes were locked with their designated keys back at the vaults, awaiting in the hands and granted access only by the bank personnel. Still, the gangs were happy to have their money back, and they praised Theo and the Cater Kings as heroes. The associate refused to answer any more questions, as he had pled the fifth with great tremoring. He was excused and escorted back to his home. The rest of the case was a jigsaw of events relayed by the media that left Lazarus with blood in the streets, controversies and conspiracies, and many unanswered questions. Several stores and storage facilities of fruit seeds were set ablaze over a course of 9 days. A week later, large crowds were running at large around the streets whilst throwing glass bottles and broken pieces of concrete at vehicles and buildings. Citizens were set in a panic as droves of gang members washed upon them like a furious flood. The local police had to team up with the city's firefighters to stem the flow of violence, but they were outnumbered and could only give way yard by yard. The hospitals were soon filled to capacity with victims of the assaults, several of which were fatal. What caused this outburst? It turned out that it had to do with a bounty of 10 million carbon steel coins for the capture of Theo Baxton, with double if caught alive. Apparently, One of the heads of the gangs issued the order not long after the delivery of the boxes to the banks. A call was made from the bank once the packages were opened, citing fraud via forgery and non-delivery of goods, followed by a plea for help against an all-out mob assault. The police noted that none of the perpetrators used any weapons outside of the bank's own supplies, from chairs to pens and even magazines, with hysterical employees reporting threats against the traitor, the embezzling rat, with maledictions attached. Theo himself was unable to be reached, for he was no longer in Lazarus. Another of his associates, before dying of his wounds in one of the hospitals mentioned earlier, only uttered this: "Had to get him out. He, not in the wrong, framed. Got him out to a friend. Gotta find Enzo." The assessment by the city's detectives were as followed. Theo was made aware of the goods inside of the containers, which turned out to be lead bars. He was made to lay low as the Cater Kings tried once more to keep the peace. The turmoil was spiraling off the rails, and the Kings were placed in the spotlight. The head of the Cater Kings, who also remains anonymous, promised the others that he would provide them with the guilty party members, i.e., he was going to offer Theo up as a sacrifice. Theo was made aware of this by one or more of his associates, official or on the outside yet on his payroll, and had to arrange for departure. Then came the arson, and that pushed everyone over the edge in desperation, especially with the bounty issued and made public despite the denial of the gang leaders giving such an outcry. Theo and company had to fight their way out of his flat and office to the getaway vehicle, which had to blow through pockets of people, as obtained from the records of different doctors overseeing patients who were all victims to the same speeding car that bowled them onto the streets. All good things must come to an end, and for a young man with a talent for numbers, it was almost curtains. About 900 people were admitted to the hospitals, with 88 losing their lives. Amongst the lost were 13 cops, 15 firefighters, 9 store owners, and a mixture of citizens and gang members. In the aftermath of one of the darkest moments of Lazarus, the questions still rebound about the roads and haunts. Who was Enzo? Who really sent the bounty, if not any of the gang leaders? Where was the money? Where is Theo Baxton? Until the young accountant is apprehended, no one knows. There is doubt that even he will know. Authorities are looking as far as the coastlines, but so are many a gang member, with the Cater Kings intent on making good of their promise. Once, a city of angels was promised. Now, a den of devils has been erected, and it calls out for nothing less than vengeance. Resolute, by the shoes. It's okay. Screw the budget. That's not this year's resolution. You deserve this. When the saleswoman asks you if you've done much running, laugh and gesture to your midsection. The woman will blink, force out a half-baked ha. It's a reaction of discomfort, not cruelty. You made it weird. You don't know why you feel the need to shame your own body in front of a stranger, but you blame it on her Lululemon leggings and air hostess smile. She makes you nervous. Most people do. When you go outside, sit next to a man on a bus bench. He's reading a book, and you recognize the cover from an English course in college. A man's body, clad in red, knight-like armor, with a white mask where his head should be. The mask is smiling and handsome on one side, twisted and snarling on the other, with a hollow void where his eyes should be. The Mysterious Stranger, by Mark Twain. Good taste. When you sit, notice how the man's eyes dash over in your direction. It's almost imperceptible, and no other part of him moves an inch. Convince yourself that the chill trickling down your spine is a sign of an early winter wind. The sweat beneath your arm says differently. Change into your new shoes right there on the bench. They're tight, but almost comforting, reminding you of the cattle squeeze chutes on the farm you grew up on. Your new shoes are white, because white seemed luxurious and fresh and symbolic. New beginnings, clean slate. Now, curse and rub your own spit into a dirt smudge on the side. Remember that white is rarely ever white at all. Think of the stains spreading like mold along shower walls. When the bus arrives, sit near the front. You'll only take it half the way home today and walk the rest. New year, new you. The man with the book sits at the back of the bus. This is your bus stop in a residential area you don't know well. Apparently, it's his bus stop too. Start walking. Notice he is walking too. This shouldn't make you nervous. You always see the worst in people. What is wrong with you? Therapy should have been one of your resolutions. It's been 15 minutes, you're almost home, but you don't want him to know where you live. So you walk past the turn to your street and feel your heart drop to your toes. You can smell the fishy stench of your own stress sweat leaking through your corduroy jacket. 20 minutes, almost out of the residential area. In a couple blocks, you'll be on Commercial Drive, where you can enter a cafe or a bar and have a panic attack in a graffitied bathroom stall until the perceived threat is gone. It wouldn't be the first time. When construction blocks access to the street crossing you meant to take, you'll have to find a detour. Luckily, there's an alley to your left, a shortcut to safety if anything. You just need to move fast. Good thing you bought those shoes. When you hear the man's footsteps beating at your heels, run. 2. Eat healthier. Start your day off right with his bento box leftovers. He ate all the shrimp from the noodles and the sushi on the side, but saved you the edamame. That's all right. You didn't need those extra calories anyway. Don't make all that running and fighting from yesterday for nothing. Take a bite. You're not hungry, but you don't know when the next time you'll see food again will be. The noodles are cold, and they slide down your throat like earthworms. Don't complain about the temperature. Your mom always told you microwaves were evil anyway. You crouch over the food on a cold concrete floor. You've stopped crying long enough to take in your surroundings. You are confined to a small circumference around your bed, with a chain clamped around your ankle, the other end of it welded to a rusty metal pole coming out of the ground. The chain rattles with each move you make. Your bed is in the center of a room, bits of foam scattered around it from mice chewing the mattress. Next to it is a bucket, where eventually you will have to relieve yourself, though you'll hold it in until it hurts. There are no windows down here, and it smells like an old boyfriend's basement, a combination of mildew and old socks. Air so thick, you feel as if you could cut into it with a knife. The corners of the room are dark but packed with things. Boxes stacked haphazardly, shelves overflowing with old books, loose papers on the ground. You can't make out what any of the books say on the spine, as much as you try to strain your eyes. So much for that clue. When he tells you to eat, you eat. Whatever he wants with you, he doesn't want you dead. Yet, take comfort in this. Hide the fork from your meal under your mattress. 3. Learn a new skill or hobby. It takes an average of 6 seconds to walk in a circle at the length of your chain. 3 seconds if you run. Count the moths that flicker around the buzzing light bulb above you. Count particles of dust in the air. Numbers were never your thing before. You were an English major once, though that life feels light years away. Divide experiences between before and after. Before, you had a cat. He had a scratchy meow and sprayed on your laundry, but slept in the crook of your arm every night. Before, you had a crush on your coworker Diane, even though she talked with her mouth open, and you caught her stealing from the baking display 3 times. After, You are shitting in a bucket. You curl up on your mattress, thin blanket pulled over your head, and cry. Try making an itemized list in your head of every kiss you've ever had. See if you can remember the script from the 1998 fantasy movie Willow. You almost can. For some reason, this makes you cry too. Go back to counting. The mice stayed hidden for the first couple days, but they're getting bolder. Keep track of every time one skitters over your hand or foot. Of all the horrors you could imagine a kidnapping victim to go through, boredom certainly was not one of them. On what you think could be the 8th day, try something different. You know the man only enters the basement twice. First, to take your used bucket, then to bring back a clean bucket and food. You have been so busy cowering in the farthest end of your chain away from him that you haven't gotten the chance to really observe. Pay attention this time. Start counting when he first unlocks the door. He keeps his eyes on the ground as descends the stairs and approaches to pick up your bucket. It doesn't look like guilt or nerves, but rather he does not seem to regard you at all, as if you are so far beneath him that your presence can hardly be perceived. You almost lose track of your counting, mind reeling. Why are you here at all when he acts as if he wants nothing to do with you? He is as nondescript a man as they come. Brown hair, dark eyes, with short, well-kept facial hair, thin-rimmed glasses, a button-down blue shirt, recently ironed, gray trousers, clean shoes. If you ever get out of this, you're not convinced you could pick him out in a police lineup. When he leaves, he shuts the door behind him, but does not lock it. These seconds are crucial. Above you, at one end of room, you can hear a toilet flush, running into pipes that go through the basement. More water running after that. Then there are footsteps to the other side of the house. He is there for a short time. Finally, the footsteps lead back to the basement door. He has returned with a freshly cleaned bucket in one hand and a tinfoil wrapped burrito in the other. He sets them both down beside you, wordlessly, and then he is gone again. The door is latched tight behind him. 4 minutes and 38 seconds. That's how long the door was unlocked for. Don't forget this. 4. Be more adventurous. Something is different today. Another moth hits the burning light bulb and falls dead into your matted hair. The mice, your only companions, have gone quiet. Upstairs, there is more movement than usual, things being dragged along the floor. Your stomach has been flip-flopping since you woke up. Call it intuition. There is the issue of that pesky iron shackle around your ankle. You made a valiant effort by nibbling off your toenails and using them as lockpicks, but they were too soft and bendable. You thought about breaking your ankle, but your heel would still be in the way. So now, you turn to the other end of your restraints, the metal rod coming out of the basement floor. At its base, it flares out into a square plate, with large iron screws holding it down into the cement. The pole is speckled with a dusty red rust that follow down the first couple links in the chain. A memory flashes in your mind of you as a young girl, loose braids and dirt smudged over your summer freckles. Your dad had an old Chevy parked on the edge of the horse's pasture, weeds growing through the windows. You tried, with all the strength in your little arms, to open the door, but the handle snapped right off and sent you flailing backwards. It left red on your hand, and you thought the car was bleeding. There could be hope after all. You take your shoes from where they've sat dutifully by the bed and put them on. Pull the chain taut and kick near the base where there is the most rust. Kick again and again. The rust stains the white of your shoes. Take a break to wipe frustrated tears from your eyes, then try something different. Pull the chain towards you, taut again. Push your feet against the chain. Harder. Your legs begin to shake, and the chain bites into the flesh of your palms. Grit your teeth. Keep pushing. It bursts. You gasp, collapse to the floor, and weep. It's refreshing to cry from joy for a change. When the man comes to change your bucket, sit in front of the pole. Don't let him see you've escaped your shackles. The man raises his eyes to meet yours, and you can suddenly feel every single hair on your body. This is the first time he's looked at you since you were taken. It doesn't last more than a second, but you are shaking. He heads up the basement stairs, bucket in hand. Shake off the chills. Let them roll down your spine and out of your system. It's now or never. With clammy hands, pick up your broken chain and cradle it to your belly. Quiet. You can feel your heat thumping against your ribcage, and you breathe hard through your nose. Leave your shoes behind. Too loud. When you get to the stairs, pretend you are a feather flitting weightlessly above the steps. Place your ear to the door. Try to hear past the pulsing of your own veins. The water is running. Open the door. 5. Read more books. When you wake up, all you see is a bright light ahead, and with some relief, ask yourself if you are finally dead. It takes a few bleary blinks for your surroundings to come back into focus. The light at the end of a tunnel becomes no more than a light bulb, flickered by the fluttering of wings. You are back in the basement. Sit up. Careful, not too fast. Your head rushes, and dots speckle your vision. You bring a hand to your head to steady it, but when you bring it down, your hand comes back sticky with red. You feel around with your hand some more, find that your hair is matted and clings to your forehead. Beneath the hair is the source of blood. It doesn't seem to be actively bleeding much, and what is there has already coagulated. Beneath where your head was laying, the mattress is soaked with your blood. You shuffle backwards away from it as your breathing grows erratic and shallow. Try to wipe your red hand off on your jeans. The blood is already caking under your fingernails. On unsteady legs, you manage to stand up. You realize that although you are back in the basement, your chain is still broken. Look frantically around the room for a weapon, or another escape you somehow missed before, until your eyes land upon the boxes and shelves. Maybe something in there could help. You hobble over to it, dragging your chain behind you, and throw open the first box you reach. It's only paper, and as you rummage, you leave red smudges and fingerprints all over them. You aren't paying attention to the words, but an image catches your eye. You stop, pull out the paper. It's a diagram of sorts, with labels and instructions in a language you can't understand. But what you do understand is that this diagram looks awfully like a pentagram. You pull out more papers, pay closer attention. Drawings of cloaked figures, goat heads, numbers and lists written in Latin and other old tongues. Box after box, they're all the same. You turn to the bookshelf, flipping open dusty tomes to more diagrams of demons. You toss the books on the floor, and they land with a satisfying thud. You blink back the dots forming in your eyes and steady yourself. Above you, footsteps are approaching the basement door. You lay back down on the mattress and pretend to be unconscious, right where he left you. 7. Appreciate the little things. You peek through your eyelashes. He is painting a pentagram in white on the floor. Beside him is an assortment of strange objects. Wax drip candles, fragments of leg bones, a skull, raven feathers in a jar, glass vials of liquids and powders, glistening gemstones. It's almost comical, the most generic, vague Satanism you could imagine. A half-frantic giggle bubbles in your chest, tugging at the corners of your mouth. Bite your tongue to keep it down. His hands clamp down on your ankles and tug. He is dragging you off the bed to the floor just beside it where he's painted the pentagram. You hear the clinking of glass, the rattle of bones as each object is arranged around your body. Then you can hear his breath above you. Feel his knees at the sides of your legs. He begins to chant. You risk a peek through small slits in your eyelid and see him kneeling over you, book in one hand and a knife in the other. You kick him in the stomach. He gasps and reels back, dropping both the knife and the book. But before you can scramble away, he is on you again, pinning your wrists to the ground. You can feel his hot breath on your face, spit flying out of his heaving mouth. He curses at you and tells you to stay down. Your fingertips brush the edge of the mattress beside you. Remember what you kept from the first day you woke up in this shithole. The fork. 6. Set healthy boundaries with the people in your life. You feel around for the metal, find its handle, grip it hard, then spit in the man's eyes. He loosens his grip on your wrists for just long enough. With utensil in hand, you thrust your arm up until it meets with his neck. The prongs sink into his flesh, as is he, were nothing more than a dense cheesecake. Now, he looks you in the eyes, and you do not cower. You hold there for a moment, driving the fork deeper in, just in case. When you let go, he takes a moment to react. Then his eyes widen, still locked with your own, and he stumbles backwards, off of your body. His hand fumbles for the fork. There is blood trickling down onto his freshly ironed shirt. With a shaking hand, he pulls the utensil from his flesh, causing the blood to rush to escape the open wound in thick spurts. He holds a hand tight to his throat, trying to slow the loss, gasping and sputtering. He turns and runs to escape the basement. Get up. Follow him. As he fumbles with the lock on the door, you grab the back of his shirt and pull. In his shock, he loses balance and drops his key on the step beneath the door. He tries to grab onto you as he falls backwards, but you step quickly to the side and cling to the stair railing. Watch as he tumbles down the stairs, landing hard on the concrete below. He struggles to get back up, only making it to his knees as his movements grow more sluggish. You can hear him gargle on his own blood. He clambers towards the stairs again. Pick up the key. Your heart flutters at the click of the door unlocking. Open it. Ahead of you is a hallway, at the end of which is your exit to safety. Don't look back at the man groveling at your heels. Step out, shut the door behind you, and lock it tight. Masterpiece of Malice. In the bowels of a towering skyscraper that touched the clouds, in a room devoid of natural light, sat Japheth, a man whose fingers danced over the keyboard like a pianist lost in the throes of a concerto. With a pair of silver-framed glasses perched on the bridge of his nose, Japheth peered into the bright screen before him. Surrounding him were his colleagues, collectively known as the Warriors, each a genius in their own right, defending a massive financial empire from the dark underbelly of the digital world. The company they worked for managed the assets and transactions of millions, safeguarding the economic backbone of numerous nations. This was a responsibility the Warriors did not take lightly. Yet, for all their collective brilliance, none were quite like Japheth. He had an artist's soul, finding beauty in the complex interweaving of code lines, seeing symphonies in the arrangement of algorithms. To him, code was not just functional, it was beautiful. On a particularly quiet afternoon, as the Warriors went about their business, something caught Japheth's eye, a flicker in a subsystem that shouldn't flicker, a minuscule anomaly in the vast web of data traffic that flowed through the servers. He paused, adjusting his glasses, his fingers momentarily frozen above the keys. Then, with a flurry of keystrokes, he isolated the section of code responsible for the irregularity. His eyes widened. The code was ingenious, an awe-inspiring masterpiece of layered algorithms, cryptographic obfuscations, and data manipulations. Yet, it was malicious, designed to siphon off minute fractions of transactions, accumulating them into an offshore account. It was as beautiful as it was dangerous, a digital dragon hiding in the complex labyrinth of financial transactions. Japheth should have felt outrage, maybe even a surge of warrior-like adrenaline to slay this dragon. But he felt none of that. Instead, he felt a pang of admiration. Could one admire the craftsmanship of a weapon designed for harm? "Everything okay, Japheth?" asked Alara, one of the warriors and the team's cryptography expert. She had an intuitive sense when something was amiss. "I've found something," he said cautiously. "Something extraordinary, but malevolent." Alara rolled her chair over to Japheth's terminal and scanned the displayed code. Her eyes narrowed. "This is the most advanced piece of malware I've ever seen. It's beautiful." "That's just it," Japheth replied. "It's too beautiful to simply exterminate. This code, the dragon, let's call it, is like a rare species discovered in the wild. It's incredible, Alara. It feels wrong to simply destroy it." She looked at him, understanding the conflict that stirred in his soul. "Japheth, it's stealing from people." I know. He cut her off. "I'm not saying we let it continue. I'm saying, can we convert it? Use its elegance for something good?" Alara sighed. "That's risky, and you know it. Besides, we'd need to trace it back to its source, figure out its origin." Japheth looked back at the screen, contemplating. The dragon had probably accumulated a small fortune by now, sitting in an account somewhere, untouchable. In an odd way, the dragon was the epitome of the greed and avarice their financial institution sometimes perpetuated. Could they use it as a force for good? Suddenly, an idea dawned on him. What if they could repurpose the dragon to serve the public good while catching the original creator red-handed? What if they could turn this artwork of maliciousness into a masterpiece of justice? The dragon was a dilemma, a moral and aesthetic quandary. It was the epitome of what Japheth loved and loathed about his work. Beautiful code used for ugly deeds. He looked at Alara, resolve solidifying in his eyes. "We have to try. If we don't, we're just as bad as the person who created it." She met his gaze and nodded. "All right, let's cage the dragon and see if we can turn it into a guardian angel." As Japheth's fingers returned to the keyboard, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was a warrior, yes, but also a coder, an artist at heart. And artists don't destroy art, they transform it. He began the arduous process of dissecting the dragon, peeling back layers of code as if they were scales, seeking to understand its fiery breath and its majestic wings. As his fingers wove new commands into the old algorithms, Japheth felt as if he were part of something larger, a symphony of chaos and harmony, code and conscience. It was a delicate task, full of risks and unknowns. But if it worked, they would not only have thwarted one of the most sophisticated financial crimes in history, but they would have also transformed a weapon of greed into a tool of justice. The dragon's fate now lay in Japheth's hands, poised between destruction and redemption. And for the first time in a long while, he felt like a true warrior, armed not just with skill, but with the moral fiber that transformed mere code into something profoundly, deeply human. Japheth spent days in a complex dance with the dragon. His screen was a blur of recoded algorithms, tested and retested to ensure they did exactly what he intended. He had convinced the warriors and even upper management to allow him the time to train the dragon, to harness its code for something beneficial. With each keystroke, he refocused the dragon's intent, directing it to identify vulnerabilities within their own systems, gaps that other malicious entities could exploit. It would be a guardian angel, albeit one birthed from malevolent genius. Alara was beside him every step of the way, providing the cryptographic lock that would contain the dragon and ensure its transformed code could only be used for their defined purposes. Finally, after endless cups of coffee and sleepless nights, they had done it. The dragon was tamed, its complexity now a force for good, patrolling the data corridors and alerting them to the weakest links. It was the network's newfound guardian, designed to protect rather than plunder. Still, there was the matter of the dragon's creator. Despite their efforts to trace back the malware's steps, the person behind it remained elusive, a ghost in the machine. Funds that were diverted remained in limbo, untraceable and untouchable, hidden away through a complex web of cryptocurrency transactions and offshore accounts. Whoever had made this was not only skilled, but exceedingly careful. They left no trace, no signature, nothing that gave away their identity. "I can't believe we can't find him," Alara said, frustration lacing her words as they looked at the final report. The dragon was a piece of genius, but it's as if it sprang into existence out of nowhere. Japheth nodded, equally puzzled and annoyed. He wanted to meet the person who could conceive such a masterpiece, understand what drove them to use such brilliance for nefarious purposes. Some artists prefer anonymity, their work speaking for them, he mused. Yeah, but this is one artist who deserves to be behind bars, Alara added. Weeks passed, and the transformed dragon proved invaluable. It flagged 3 potential vulnerabilities within the first month, each of which could have led to catastrophic breaches. It was a win for the warriors, and yet a sense of incompleteness nagged at Japheth. Then one day, as he sifted through flagged data, he saw it, a message hidden deep within layers of encryption, appearing as an anomaly within an anomaly. It was the equivalent of a digital whisper, something so subtle it could easily be overlooked. But it wasn't overlooked, not by Japheth. The message read, "A dragon's nature is to be free. Yet, you've caged it, transformed it." Interesting. It's not often one finds a worthy opponent. Japheth felt a shiver run down his spine. The creator knew. He wanted to reply, to communicate with this enigmatic entity, but as quickly as the message had appeared, it was gone, swallowed up by the digital ether. A one-time anomaly that their systems could not trace. "He knows we changed it," Japheth said to Alara, recounting the discovery. "And he respects it in his own twisted way." "Or he's mocking us because we couldn't catch it," she countered. "Maybe it's both," Japheth mused. The dragon's creator remained elusive, but his creation now served a noble purpose. Japheth often wondered if they would ever cross paths again in some future dance of code and intent. He took off his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose, pondering the complexities of human nature and the even more complex realm of ethical code. They had won a battle, but not the war. The dragon was tamed, but its creator still lurked in the shadows of cyberspace. As he looked at his screen, at the elegant lines of code that now served to protect rather than harm. Japheth felt both accomplishment and a strange sense of gratitude, for it was in the depths of the dragon's malevolent beauty that he found an opponent worthy of his skill, a complex riddle to solve, and, most importantly, a way to transform something harmful into something good. His eyes moved to the flickering cursor, an ever-present reminder that every end is also a beginning. The world of code was vast and filled with both demons and angels, but for now, the dragon was one of the angels. And so, in the company of warriors, with the shadow of an elusive adversary stretching from some unknown corner of the internet, Japheth continued to seek the beauty in code, forever vigilant, forever in awe of the dual nature of his digital world.